Chapter 579. Buddhism had a supreme divine ability called Buddha's celerity, also known as Rui. Wherever the heart goes, the body will go. Zhuang countries Du Ruhui also mastered a divine ability called so close, yet worlds apart. With one step, heaven and earth would spin, and the end of the world would be within reach. These two divine abilities looked similar, but their foundations were completely different. The essence of Rui was the heart. It was the power of the heart that transcended space. On the other hand, the essence of so close, yet worlds apart was the space. It was the understanding of space, turning the end of the world into a short distance. When the white bone god descended, he also brought his followers through the white bone gate. But that was different. He borrowed the power of the netherworld, and the power of the netherworld was the main force. But the arrival of the blind watchman was different. He borrowed the power of the great nation-protecting array and did not involve any divine ability. Otherwise, with the difference in strength between him and King Dushur, it would be impossible for him to detect his arrival so quickly. It was because King Dushur was attacking the light screen of the great nation-protecting array at that time and felt the fluctuations of the array's power. After killing King Bianqing and King Dushur, the blind watchman turned around and appeared in the calm Sea Gao clan's territory. At this time, King Pingding was laughing wildly in the air, constantly bombarding the Gao clan's territory with Dao techniques. Everywhere he looked, houses were destroyed, residents were dead, and the place was a mess. From beginning to end, the calm Sea Gao clan did not organize any effective resistance. This kind of performance was completely unworthy of the calm Sea Gao clan. This also fueled King Pingding's arrogance. It was said that she was powerful and had many experts, but now it seemed that it was only SOSO. At least in the calm Sea County, there was no one who could fight. Emperor Song, he shouted wildly. Let's see who killed more. Just as he finished speaking, the watchman with the white lantern arrived. He appeared in front of King Pingding, raised his hand, and simply pressed forward. There were countless thoughts in his mind, but they were extinguished in an instant. King Pingding's wild laughter stopped abruptly. He was already dead. The extremely old watchman turned around slightly and was already facing the other Yama of hell. Then he sensed a fist, a brutal, pure, and powerful fist. King Songdi, who came from hell. He sensed the arrival of an unrivaled expert. He did not choose to run away, much less kneel and beg for surrender. He was the third-ranked Yama King of the Gateless Hell. He was King Songdi. Everyone in the Doorless Hell was more or less incompatible with this world. Rejecting the existing rules and order was also rejected by this world. Just like what Yingguan had said when he first established this organization, they were a group of people that even hell wouldn't open its doors to. This is why they call themselves the Infernal Realm, and why they call themselves Yama Kings. Pave the way for me. Open the door for me. For King Songdi, what had left the deepest impression on him during this trip to Linzi was not the moment they successfully killed Zhao Xian, nor was it the time they escaped from Linzi, nor was it the experience of being chased to the ends of the earth. What he remembered the most were the paper dolls he had made in the small bridge. It was a different kind of life. Plain and simple, a life rooted in smoke and dust. It turned out that after death, there were still so many stories to tell. It turned out that serving death was like living. But now he was here. He was King Songdi. Since King Qingguang dared to lure Yulong away by himself, how could he, King Songdi, not dare to face this expert who suddenly appeared? Boom, 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 boom. 5 consecutive explosions rang out. Then, 4 stars lit up in the distant sky. In that instant, they were extremely bright, almost competing with the rising sun. But in the next moment, the sky suddenly darkened. The entire world where the fist touched fell into a pitch-black night that couldn't be released. King Pingding died in a single exchange. Of course, he could also recognize the terrifying gap between himself and his opponent. But his terror lay in this. Without any preparation, he directly detonated the 5 residences and 4 floors, infusing his lifetime of brilliance into this fist. He knew that he was going to die, but he wouldn't allow himself to die quietly like King Pingding. He was King Sondi. Amidst the endless undercurrents, his fist appeared. In the heavens and on the earth, there was only this fist. The most powerful and ferocious fist could suppress mountains and rivers. Facing such a powerful fist, a hand appeared. A skinny hand, with 5 fingers spread open, reached into the darkness that couldn't be dissolved and covered that fist. Just like day covering night, just like flames covering the sea, that resplendent and tyrannical brilliance was erased. And so the sky brightened. The night watchman with a white lantern stood in the air, his feet not moving at all. And King Sondi, who stood on the ground like an iron tower, exploded from the inside out. He still died without any accident. He didn't create any miracles, not even a ripple. However, among all of the Yamakings who had perished so far, he was the only one who had died at Chinya's hands. In a sense, he was in charge of his own fate. Even the night watchman, who had been silent all this while, held a white lantern and shone it on him. At this moment, a very abrupt voice sounded. It was a voice that was very manic because of the fear still lingering. Why did you only come now? Do you know how many people we have lost and how great our losses are? The person who spoke was a young man. Probably because he was finally safe, he ran out of his hiding place. And the fear he felt when facing the 2 kings of hell was released at this moment. He seemed to be a little furious. I will definitely tell my sister about this. Which office are you from? The Gao family won't let this go. Pig and dog, what right do you have to represent the Gao family? Gao Xianchong, the patriarch of the Gao family, had come out of the dark room at some point. He rushed over and kicked the young man down. Under the young man's incredulous gaze, Gao Xianchong used all his strength and almost stepped on his vitals. You don't have the right to speak in the Gao family. Master, please don't. Young Master Gao Qing just said something indiscreet. Patriarch, please don't. A loyal clansman held Gao Xianchong's foot tightly, not letting him trample his son to death on the spot. Gao Qing was so scared that he didn't dare to speak for a while, but his eyes were full of shock and resentment. Gao Xianchong only cared about the night watchman. You have done the Gao family a favor, but not a grudge. On behalf of the Gao family, Xianchong asked for your forgiveness. Please punish this unfilial son of mine as a warning to others. However, whether it was Gao Qing's outburst of extreme fear or Gao Xianchong's respectful attitude, he didn't hesitate to kill his son to avoid disaster. The night watchman didn't react at all. He didn't even show any displeasure about the farce in the Gao family's territory. And of course, he didn't leave any words. He just took a step and disappeared again. Gao Xianchong, who was left on the spot, seemed to have his bones pulled out. His entire body collapsed. He looked at his son on the ground with hatred, then said to the clansmen around him, You saved this unfilial son, but harmed our Jing Hai Gao. Patriarch, it shouldn't be like this. Young Master Gao Qing only lost his composure and threatened a few words, but he didn't do anything. No matter how fierce that lord was, he had to be reasonable, right? Even if he doesn't care about our Gao family, does he not care about noble consort Jing? Do you know who he is? Gao Xianchong said bitterly. He's the leader of Deqi's night watchman. He's the night watchman for the Jiang dynasty. Chapter 580. How much of Gao Xianchong's actions were sincere and how much of it was an act? A truly smart person would naturally be able to tell. His fear was real, and so was his anger. However, with his cultivation as the strongest outer building realm cultivator in the Gao clan, who could stop him if he really wanted to kill his son? Probably only the blind watchman could do it, but he didn't react at all. Gao Xianchong could only helplessly stop under his clansmen's desperate attempts to stop him. His fear, his anger, and the fact that he purposely pointed out the watchman's identity was nothing more than a show of weakness and self-protection. He was willing to put the Kam Si Gao clan in a lowly position to beg the watchman's forgiveness for his son. In the worst-case scenario, if something happened to the Kam Si Gao clan, people would naturally link it to the watchman. This was a form of protection in broad daylight. It was very smart, but also very helpless. Because even if the Kam Si Gao clan used all of their power, There was no other way to protect the domineering Gao Qing. A favored noble consort Jing allowed the entire Si Gao clan to rise to the heavens. No matter what happened, as long as noble consort Jing was mentioned, everything would go smoothly. As a result, Gao Qing had developed an arrogant personality. Gao Xianchong was protecting his son. Of course, the blind watchman was well aware of this. Although he had been blind for a long time, it was just like what he had said to Zhong Xiansheng at the old site of the withered courtyard that day. This old man's eyes may be blind, but his heart is clear. In a situation where both sides were attacked at the same time, it was his choice to go to Tianfu City first before coming to the Gao clan. Yu Leng, who had already retired, had to care about noble consort Jing's feelings, but as the watchman's leader, he didn't. No matter how favored noble consort Jing was, she couldn't reach out to the watchman. Killing wasn't too interesting, but it wasn't too tiring either. After watchman for the Jiang dynasty for so many years, what he was best at was killing people, and what he did the most was also killing people. And now, he was leaving this place, and it had nothing to do with the Si Gao clan. It was only because there was someone more important to kill. Linhai County, at the docks that had just been ravaged. After King Dushi was killed in an instant, the night watchman turned around and headed for Jinghai County. The soldiers on the dock and the sea merchants who happened to stop there all calmed down and counted their losses. The dead were already dead, but the living still had to live. Although it was rare for the King of Hell to launch a surprise attack on the docks, it was definitely not an isolated case. It was just that Qi had been powerful in the eastern region for too long, and many Qi people could not get used to it. Amidst the hustle and bustle, one of the corpses among the first to be killed by King Dushi suddenly moved. This corpse was originally lying face down. It was an ordinary sea merchant's follower who had been accidentally hit by King Dushi's attack and had died in a hurry. But at this moment, he abruptly clambered to his feet, and his aura was completely different from before. He was fierce and ruthless, and he was wearing a Yamaking mask on his face. The king coroner. It turned out that he had sneaked into this dock early on and deliberately died in the hands of King Dushi. With blind strength as a night watchman, it was not difficult for him to see through his disguise. But even a powerhouse like Blind's night watchman would only pay attention to King Dushi in the situation at that time. Other than that, he would at most observe those who were still alive and subconsciously ignore those who were already dead. It was undoubtedly a very risky act for the king coroner to disguise himself as a corpse under the eyes of such a powerhouse. But it was precisely because of his courage to take risks at the edge of a cliff that he succeeded in obtaining such a wonderful opportunity. King Dushi had just attacked the Great Array here, and the night watchman had just killed him and left. King Dushi was already dead, and no one would have thought that a king of hell would dare to come here. The king coroner's sudden appearance gave the others at the dock a big fright. The dock immediately fell into chaos again. Whether it was the sea merchants or the soldiers guarding the dock, no one dared to jump out and block the way. Those who had the courage would have already been killed by King Dushi earlier. Unlike the chaos of these people, the king coroner's goal was very clear. Or rather, from the beginning, this moment was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Just as King Dushi understood him very well, he also understood King Dushi very well. He knew that King Dushi and King Bianqing would definitely play tricks in the operation, but he didn't know whether King Dushi would succeed. He was just preparing for a rainy day and hiding in the target that King Dushi was most likely to run to. If King Dushi succeeded in breaking out, he would just run after him. If King Dushi was unlucky, he would take advantage of the opportunity left behind by King Dushi to escape. At this moment, the king coroner waved his hand and collected King Dushi's corpse and rushed without hesitation towards the place where King Dushi had previously attacked. He directly rushed towards that place with his entire body. In the entire gateless hell, Yingguan often took him with him. Not because he trusted him the most, but because he had to keep an eye on him at all times for fear that he would attack the other kings of hell in the organization. He was ranked 4th in the gateless hell, not because he could only be ranked 4th, but because Yingguan only allowed him to be rank 4th. He was still much stronger than King Dusher when he unleashed his true strength. So when he used all his strength and erupted with all his strength, the terrifying power seemed to overturn the entire dock, and his full force hit the faint light curtain of the great array without any fancy moves. It was silent, because most of the power was absorbed by the great array. A small opening appeared on the light curtain of the great array. That small opening was where the blue sea and the blue sky were located, the path to freedom. The king corner didn't even pause for a breath as he drilled through it. As soon as he drilled through, the power of the great array surged back and patched up the opening that had appeared. The entire process took less than a breath. This meant that this degree of damage was completely within the limits of the great array, and it wasn't damaged in the slightest. But the king corner still managed to escape. Just as the opening on the light curtain closed up, a figure moved above the dock. The night watchman who had sensed the commotion here had arrived once more. At an ordinary dock, the head of the night watchman of the Jiang dynasty had arrived twice in a short period of time. As soon as he appeared, he immediately knew what had happened here. And for the first time, he sighed like Yulong. To him, the strength of the gateless hell was nothing. However, the disposition of this organization showed that they had the potential to bring calamity to the world. King Songdi had shown him the frenzied determination of the gateless hell, and the escaping corner king had shown him the sinister cunning of the gateless hell. If such an organization could grow, it would bring about endless calamity. Without any hesitation, he stepped out of the formation and onto the sea. He wanted to find the escaping corner king as quickly as possible and kill him. To the night watchman of the Jiang dynasty, killing him was a sign of respect. A terrifying divine sense spread out in an instant and locked onto the fleeing figure almost immediately. But the reaction of the world was also swift. From the direction of the offshore archipelago, an extremely ferocious voice rolled over. Return. The sky shook and the sea surged. With a single shout, a tsunami was formed. The surging tide was like a horde of giant beasts, surging back and forth between the heavens and the earth. Return, return. This wasn't the land of Qi. Experts of this level weren't allowed to cross the border recklessly. The night watchman paused for a moment before finally turning around. This wasn't the time. Besides, this wasn't his responsibility. Chapter 581. Near the border between the Yang Kingdom and the Rong Kingdom. The battle was still ongoing in the battlefield, shrouded by the cast iron black pillars. Jiang Wang sent back the frightened caravan and stood alone outside the range of the cast iron black pillars to watch the battle. Not everyone had the opportunity to witness a battle of this level. A battle between experts was definitely not a street brawl. Watching the show was not something fun. Without a certain level of strength, the spectators would be swept away by the aftermath of the battle at any time. Of course, Jiang Wang was now separated by the cast iron black pillars and was safe. He also had a special experience of watching a fight in a cage. It was said that in some dark markets, there were cultivator cage fights where people bet on life and death. Because of the bloody excitement, it was very popular among some people. But no matter how much money one spent, it was impossible to enjoy a death match of this level. For Jiang Wang, this battle between a top expert of the Outer Tower and a divine descent expert was very rare. Especially in this battle, Yingguan was already not holding back and was fighting with his life. After the inner tower was the outer tower. He could understand many details of this battle and could be said to have benefited immensely. In this ongoing battle, Yingguan's situation was already very bad. His eyes were already occupied by a demonic green, and his handsome face was also filled with extremely complicated and chaotic emotions. Resentment, anger, hatred, suspicion, pain. Jiang Wang saw countless negative emotions on Yingguan's face, constantly changing. But he did not see any emotion that belonged to Yingguan alone. The art of cursing, Yin Sheng, was a small Tao. It had been like this since its birth. It came from the evil thoughts of human nature. Whether it was because of hatred or pain, the final result was a kind of evil and vicious method. It did not even have the qualifications to be called a Tao at all. It was just a kind of evil technique. But Yin Guan, who was in the lower tower 27, had no other choice. Yu Wu's accumulation was in the upper tower, and with his talent, the day he went to the upper tower would be the day of his death. The most lethal technique that he could come into contact with in the lower tower was the art of cursing Yin Sheng. He could only use this technique alone and secretly explore and cultivate behind everyone's back. In a situation where he lacked resources and no one to guide him, he used this narrow little technique as a foundation and went all the way to the peak of the outer tower. He could be said to be a stunning talent. Throughout history, there had never been a single cultivator who majored in incantations who could reach his current level. There was no road ahead of him. In order to escape the fate of being devoured by the mutant tortoise, he didn't hesitate to fall into hell and use this evil method as the foundation of his Tao. However, hell did not leave a door open for him. He could only pave the way for himself and open the door for himself, gathering a group of unruly experts together to form the gates of hell. Almost all of the Yama Kings had been personally subdued by him. In the outer tower, there was no need to doubt his strength. But in front of Yulong, who was at the divine descent realm, everything seemed so powerless. If I don't become a god, it'll all be a bubble. These words had been circulating in the cultivation world for a long time. No one knew who first said it, but it undoubtedly represented the thoughts of many cultivators. They could only watch helplessly as their lifespans came to an end. Their cultivation would gradually decline, and their qi and blood would be depleted. They would slowly fall from transcendent to ordinary. Many cultivators chose to commit suicide at the last moment of their lives because they could not bear the huge difference. Someone as strong as Ji Cheng was known as the strongest outer tower in the history of Yang country at his peak. Under Qi's secret suppression, he was unable to break through to God's arrival. He could only watch helplessly as he weakened day by day. All of his hopes were extinguished one by one. In the end, on the battlefield of Qiyang, he used his own head to complete the fame of the two youths. To Yulong, who was at God's arrival, how could Yin Guan's strength not be an illusion? The reason why King Qin Guang of the Gates of Hell was so strong was because he had never fought a constable head-on. Therefore, Jiang Wang could see that Yin Guan was sent flying time and time again as he desperately tried to attack. His pupils had completely turned jade green, and he seemed demonic and insane. He was maximizing his control over negative emotions and the power of negative emotions. However, as time passed, the negative emotions would also corrode him. Therefore, his most powerful state could not be maintained for long. However, he could not stop facing Yulong, because once he exited this state, he would not even have a chance to exchange blows. Even Jiang Wang could see Yin Guan's state. Of course, Yulong could. He was even consciously prolonging this state, letting Yin Guan break down on his own. It was not difficult to take down Yin Guan. However, he had to use the smallest price to get rid of the leader of the Gates of Hell. As time passed, Yin Guan's negative emotions corroded deeper and deeper. His attacks became crazier and more powerful, but they also became more disorganized. Yulong's response became more relaxed. There was no need for him to risk his life with a lunatic who was about to die. Therefore, he slowed down his attacks. However, Yin Guan's movements became more violent. His green eyes were crazed, his long hair danced wildly, and his lips started to move rapidly. Voices rang out continuously, but it was not him who was speaking. Men's voices, women's voices, old people's voices, children's voices. Those were countless crazy ravings. I curse you, curse you, curse you. You deserve to die. You deserve to die. Go to hell. You are destined to die without a burial ground. I curse all of you, with my flesh, my hair, my life, my everything. I curse all of you. I am willing to walk through hell with a mountain of swords and enter hell with a sea of fire, as long as all of you suffer the same pain as me. Yin Guan's expression was also alternating between laughing and crying. Sometimes it was hideous, and sometimes it was painful. He had completely gone crazy. He had been assimilated by the curse. He had been possessed. Yulong made such a judgment and retreated. If the heavens wanted to destroy him, they would first make him crazy. At such a time, he could just sit and watch King Qingguang's self-destruct. There was no need to interfere and bring trouble to himself. Yulong's judgment was undoubtedly very accurate. Moreover, he had made the right choice at the first moment. However, he soon realized that he could not get away. Yingguan had obviously lost his consciousness and was being corroded by the curse. However, he was still chasing after him. It was as if attacking Yulong had become a kind of life instinct. It was like eating when one was hungry and sleeping when one was sleepy. There was no need for wisdom to guide it. It was the most instinctive and direct choice. Yulong could not get away for a moment. However, the crazed Yingguan was getting closer and closer. The possessed Yingguan's instinct was to kill Yulong. The green light that originally only covered his fist became more and more dazzling. In the end, it left his body and condensed into green flames on the surface of his body, burning coldly. It was a kind of extremely cold burning, as if it wanted to burn the eyes and even the soul of the spectator. Every green flame was a kind of self-destruction. Chapter 582. Self-destruction was a terrifying tendency that went against life's instincts. Because survival was the eternal yearning of life. Yulong was obviously stronger than Yingguan, whether it was Yingguan in his explosive state or in his demonic state. The challenge of an outer building realm against a divine arrival realm was like a joke. But even Yulong realized that he could not wait any longer. Facing Yingguan, who was in a demonic state, if he still blindly retreated, he would very likely be injured. Then he would not wait any longer. Since King Qingguang had already gone mad and could not wait to be destroyed, then he would destroy him. Yulong did not dodge anymore. He straightened his hands and aimed at Yingguan. From the void, 10 pitch-black chains suddenly drilled out. One end of the chains was rooted in the void, while the other end of the chains slithered forward like a poisonous snake. In an instant, they circled around Yingguan a few times and intertwined around him. Without waiting for him to react, it tied him up and tightened. Yingguan, who was in his demonic state, was extremely fast, but he could not avoid it. His entire body was bound by the pitch-black chains. He could not open his hands or move his legs. The chains heavily bound him, leaving only his head outside. But his expression kept changing. It was either malevolent, painful, or resentful. The only expression that did not belong to him was his own. The current Yingguan was just a shell that carried the power of the curse. It carried the strong power of the curse, and had to carry the countless resentful thoughts. Yulong naturally did not have any sympathy for King Qingguang, who had no door to hell. After tying him up, he naturally reached out with his right hand and wanted to take off his head. In such a state, there was no point in capturing Yingguan alive. But at that moment, patter, the chains that had drilled out from the void suddenly broke. Green flames were still floating around Yingguan's body. The chains formed by the legalist secret technique had actually been burned and broken. No, Yulong had a more accurate feeling in his heart. The pitch-black chains were not burned. Instead, under the burning of the green flames, they actually had self-destruction consciousness and broke off. What kind of power was this? Even though Yulong had been accompanied by transcendent cases his whole life and had seen a lot of things, he had never encountered such a power. Because before this, no one had pushed the Yin Sheng curse technique to such a high level. Even though that person was already possessed by evil, he already knew that the green flames were extraordinary, but he didn't know that they were this terrifying. Therefore, when the deranged Yingguan rushed over with green flames and punched toward his outstretched hand, for the first time in this battle, he didn't choose to take it head-on. Instead, he withdrew his hand and retreated. Previously, he had retreated in order to wait for Yingguan to self-destruct. But this time, he had no choice but to retreat. He seemed to inadvertently glance behind a cast iron black pillar, feeling a little embarrassed, as if he had lost face in front of a young blue metal. But that was all. Yingguan in his demonic state could indeed pose a threat to him, but it was only at the level of being able to pose a threat. He was still no match for him, no matter how terrifying the green flames were. Being glanced at by Yulong's indifferent gaze, Jiang Wang had other thoughts. Why is he looking at me? You need my help? Could it be that Yin Guan is stronger than I imagined and has already caused him internal injuries? Should I take action? Help who? Jiang Wang hurriedly shook off this terrible thought. What choice did he have? Of course, he could only help Yulong. This was Qi, unless he didn't want to live anymore and wanted to implicate Cheng Gengsheng before he died. As a blue metal, there is no reason for me to stand by and do nothing. Jiang Wang's mind spun rapidly, but he spat out another mouthful of blood. It seemed that his injuries were quite serious. Sir Constable, it's not that I don't want to help. It's that my body doesn't allow me to. I want to kill the thief, but I'm powerless. Jiang Wang explained in his mind. He stared at Yulong, planning to faint directly if he sent out another signal. But he obviously thought too much. Yulong didn't need his help at all. He also didn't think that he could help in a battle of this level. From Jiang Wang's perspective, Yulong was suspended in the air, facing the crazed Yin Guan. He first stretched out his hand and pressed down, and an invisible wall instantly blocked Yin Guan. Under the burning of the green flames, this wall once again self-destructed and collapsed. Yulong took advantage of this obstruction and stretched out his right hand, shouting sternly, "Silence!" Yin Guan's lips were still moving, but those clamorous curses suddenly disappeared. At the same time, one of the black iron pillars that trapped the surrounding space was suddenly uprooted. It rapidly shrank and flew into his hand. A killing rod. Yin Guan, who was sober, didn't seem to have any thoughts of escaping from the beginning. Yin Guan, who was in a demonic state, didn't have such thoughts either. He didn't have any room to think, so of course he didn't have any thoughts. So the seal was no longer so tight. And Yulong needed the killing rod now. Only a weapon that condensed the power of law could ensure that it wouldn't be attacked by the evil green flames and not self-destruct. Holding the killing rod in his hand, Yulong directly smashed it on Yin Guan's head. The rod smashed Yin Guan so hard that he fell backward. The burning of the green flames couldn't break the killing rod on its own. But Yin Guan, who was in a demonic state, didn't have any emotions like fear or avoidance. He fell backward, but when he fell halfway, he bounced back up and pounced on Yulong again. Yin Guan, who was in a demonic state, was naturally the strongest state he had ever been in. But once the green flames were restrained, his single attack would be revealed. Because Yin Guan, who was in such a state, didn't have the ability to think. His attacks were all based on instinct. Back and forth, he just charged forward and attacked. When he was knocked down, he climbed back up and charged forward to attack again. And because of the green flames, Yulong couldn't use any other methods. Because it was hard to guarantee that it wouldn't self-destruct. Since the killing rod was proven to be able to resist the green flames, then he might as well just use this killing rod. Yulong raised his rod and attacked, planning to beat Yin Guan to death here. Jiang Wang then saw the long-haired, green-eyed Yin Guan charge forward again and again, punching, kicking, headbutting, but he was sent flying by Yulong time and time again. The injuries on his body were getting worse and worse, and the green flames were getting dimmer and dimmer. His lips kept moving, but his voice was dispelled and his curses couldn't reach his ears. His face twisted crazily, changing from various negative emotions. And near the location where they were fighting, a few half-broken chains connected to the void were still twisting, as if some kind of power was resisting the self-destruct consciousness. In an even larger area, there were a few black iron pillars that seemed to connect the heavens and the earth. They formed a cage for this battle, coldly imprisoning life and death. Further away, the small but still visible black dot was the expanded outpost in the land of Yang, facing Rome. Passing through this outpost meant leaving Qi. To the assassins who had no door to hell, this was their chance of survival. It was already in their field of vision, but it seemed like Yin Guan would never reach it. Chapter 583. As the battle raged on, the sentries in the distance naturally noticed it. However, they did not send anyone over. They had their duties, which were only at the border. Leaving their post was a crime. As for matters within Qi, there would naturally be people to deal with. Just from this point, one could see how strict Qi's military discipline was. The soldiers and the sentries would not come out easily. They did not even have the chance to disguise themselves. For a normal border army to be like this, the military god Jiang Mengxiong played a huge role. One could see how strong Qi's military was. To escape from Qi, which was under martial law, was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The blue metal constable was the person in charge of solving matters involving transcendence in Qi. Although Yulong had been in seclusion for a long time, he had the qualifications to be in charge of this battle. More importantly, the three protectors of Yangdi did not have the ability to interfere in this battle. He watched as Yingguan, who was in a demonic state, was beaten up miserably and walked towards death step by step. Although Jiang Wang did not show any expression on his face, he was a little anxious. Maybe Yingguan dying here was the best choice for him. That way, the fact that he had helped Yingguan would never be exposed. He could then naturally become a grade 4 blue metal. With the strength of the inner mansion realm, he would have some power that only outer mansion realm experts had. Just like how Lin Yuxi, who was in the soaring dragon realm, had a grade 5 blue metal. At the same time, he could also obtain a secret technique from the treasury that was suitable for the inner mansion realm. It could be said that there were many benefits and no disadvantages. However, many times in Jiang Wang's choices, benefits were not the most important. Yingguan had saved his life, although even Yingguan himself thought that they were even. However, Jiang Wang was rational. In other words, his relationship with Yingguan was not so deep that he would lose his rationality. The more he watched the battle, the more he understood how strong the two people were. He did not have the ability to interfere in the battle between Yulong and Yingguan. Jiang Yin, do you have any way to save Yingguan? Jiang Wang's expression did not change, but he asked in Tongtian Palace. Jiang Yin had obviously been paying attention to the battle. He responded almost immediately. That depends on whether you really want to save him. If you have something to say, say it. You still can't reach your full potential. Give the body to me for the time being, and I will help Yingguan escape. Then I'll return it to you. The voice stopped abruptly. Jiang Wang couldn't be bothered to scheme against him, so he directly used the divine spirit flower C to envelop the netherworld candle. He had already benefited a lot from watching the battle between Yingguan and Yulong. Since Jiang Yin's train of thought was so open, it was better for him to stop watching. It seemed like there was no other way. He thought he could only watch as Yingguan was beaten to death in front of him. He couldn't help but watch, because as a Qi blue metal holder, he shouldn't feel pity for the leader of hell. Not only did he want to admire Yulong after he killed Yingguan, he wanted to be the first one to cheer. This was his script, and it was also a barrier that he could not overcome in this play. Yingguan, who was in a demonic state, couldn't feel any pain at all. He didn't know why he was in despair. Other people's feelings had nothing to do with him. He wasn't himself anymore. He was the amalgamation of all curses, the carrier of evil thoughts. Maybe only crazily attacking Yulong was the only way to explain the original identity of this body. Yingguan, who was in a demonic state, went all out with each attack. It was always violent and fierce. However, it inevitably became weaker and weaker. No matter how much he went all out, the amount of power he could use would become lesser and lesser. No matter how fierce and fearless he was, he could only walk towards death step by step. The killing might cudgel, which contained the prestige of legalism, caused Yingguan to be covered in injuries. Who knew how many of his bones were broken? It was only because of that chaotic and crazy power that he was able to maintain his fighting stance. The green flames around him slowly withered. One by one, they dissipated, turning into specks of green light that fell to the ground. Yulong's attacks became fiercer and fiercer, more and more open, and more fearless. That was because the only thing that could make him wary was the green flames. The first to notice the change was Jiang Wang. Yulong's attention was all on the green flames. He was waiting for them to wither so that he could kill Yingguan in one strike. However, Jiang Wang had always been paying attention to Ying expression. The countless expressions of pain that constantly changed represented countless wills of pain. The curse was first because of hatred. Ying had completely accepted the chaotic power of the curse. He had to endure the pain. However, as the green flames were gradually beaten down, the changes in his expression became slower and slower, becoming fewer and fewer. His body became worse and worse, closer and closer to death. The green in his eyes also became fainter and fainter. It seemed like the decline of his life, the normal reaction of the power of the curse gradually collapsing. He was gradually dying. As a transcendent cultivator, it was natural that before he died, he would gradually become ordinary. Jiang Wang inexplicably thought of the scene when he first saw Ying. At that time, he was a traitor who had appeared out of nowhere. He met fist with fist, directly defending the commander of the Monument Army, Zhang Chuyang, outside the 27 lower cities. He became famous in a single battle, which made Jiang Wang feel even more stunned. Today, as the green flames withered, he seemed to have witnessed the end of a fascinating story. This was the process of a transcendent cultivator dying, the experience of a genius cultivator withering away. Flowers would eventually wither. Jiang Wang sighed in his heart. However, at a certain moment, the struggle and pain on Ying face disappeared. The evil thoughts that belonged to the countless people who had cursed him in the world lost their carrier, leaving only calmness, a calmness of loneliness and pain. That calmness was extremely powerful. What was a curse? Hating the heavens for being unfair, hating the earth for being unfair, hating people for being powerless. A heart full of grievances that could not be resolved, a life of suffering with no way out. One could only pray to the gods to bring disaster to the people they hated. Curses were a kind of power of resentment. Since ancient times, no one had developed this kind of power to such an extent. Ying had grasped the enormous power of the curse, but he had no choice but to face the invasion of the countless people who had cursed him. Some had encountered injustice, some had reported to the authorities, some had lost their wives and children, some had exterminated their entire families. There were countless pains and torments in the world. Ying carried the burden of his crimes. He had experienced everything, endured everything, and finally chose to face everything. His will returned. Yulong's feelings were even more direct, because the remaining green flames had suddenly disappeared. They were not scattered by him, but dissolved by themselves. Ying pair of strange and evil green eyes had also returned to black. This kind of black was the darkness of calmly looking at oneself in the midst of endless pain. Yulong could feel that King Qingguang's body, which was originally on the verge of destruction, suddenly began to glow with vitality. His physical body began to stabilize, the kind of stability that connected the heavens and the earth. His blood began to thicken, the kind of thickness that traced back to the past. It was space, history, and the instinctive feeling of being moved. Between the heavens and the earth, there seemed to be a kind of vast tremor occurring. It was a kind of wordless declaration. It was a declaration of Tao. I feel as if a god has descended. Chapter 584. Jiang Wang had been thinking about a question. Why did Ying force himself into a corner? Why did he have to court death? After thinking about it, he could only think of this reason. That day, Ying said to him, I have realized my potential too early. If I follow the prescribed order, it'll be hard to see God's descent. How could a person like Ying be willing to stop before God's descent? Therefore, he was forcing himself. He purposely put himself in such a situation and directly challenged God's descent without any backup plans. He fought against Yulong. He had to repeatedly push himself to his limits and see his own path in the midst of life and death. This process was extremely dangerous because Yulong was not his teacher or friend. He would definitely not show mercy to him. He was facing a true life and death crisis. This was an extreme sprint at the edge of a cliff. If he failed once, he would immediately fall into the endless abyss. Jiang Wang once thought that Yingguan had failed. But now he was like a god descending. The sunlight was not as dazzling as him. He stood proudly among the mountains and rivers. He grabbed the killing might cudgel and looked at Yulong, who could not hide his shock and anger. "Are you done, Constable Yu?" Only when King Qingguang achieved God's descent did Yulong understand what role he played in this battle. In the previous battle, Yingguan continued to unleash his strongest state. It seemed that he had been forced into a trance by Yulong. But in fact, all of this was his own choice. When he was in a trance, he sealed his 5 senses and 7 senses, allowing his body to be corroded by the power of the curse. He allowed the chaotic evil thoughts to control his body. The only thing he could do was to use his great willpower to carve out an instinct. Attacking Yulong's instinct, he treated himself as a piece of scrap metal and threw it into the furnace. He would either melt or become a sword. And he, Yulong, naturally became the iron hammer that was cast, smashing away Yingguan's impurities with each strike. He personally 100 refined Yingguan into steel. That powerful and chaotic curse power was completely tempered under his powerful attacks as a god's descent. Countless evil thoughts were removed, leaving only the purest power of the curse. At the last moment of his life, Yingguan returned and immediately integrated all the power that had lost consciousness into one furnace. He broke and then rebuilt, using this opportunity to God's descent. If this process was a breath faster and the impurities were not completely removed, he would not be able to immediately descend. If he had been slower by a single breath, his physical body would have already died. His returning would be meaningless before Yulong. He wouldn't even have the chance to switch to the divine path. And Yingguan had accurately grasped that sliver of opportunity. This was too risky, too inconceivable, but he was also too talented, too breathtaking. Good? Very good. Of course, Yulong was Yulong. After the initial shock and anger, his fighting spirit was reignited. Every generation brings forth new talents, and each new generation replaces the old. My trip out of the mountain was not in vain. He gripped the killing might cudgel, and his legalist might forced Yingguan's hand away. In the beginning, he had only participated in this matter because he was invited by Zhang Shi to redeem the reputation of the patrol manor. Later on, when he faced the demonized Yingguan, due to his pride as a veteran expert, he wanted to win the battle beautifully and easily. At this point, he had a new understanding of the situation. He wanted to kill King Qingguang. They had to do it at all costs, regardless of life and death. Catching thieves all day long, I didn't expect to send them on their way today. Yulong's aura surged wildly. The will that belonged to him started to fill up this entire space. Come, King Qingguang, use all your abilities to kill me. I'm willing to use this head of mine to make your name known. Good. Yingguan also shouted arrogantly. I'll use you to make my name known. His surroundings were once again enveloped by the dark green light, and the enormous power of the curse surged like a tidal wave. Yulong focused all his attention, not daring to relax at all. Yingguan's aura surged, and his fist wrapped in the green light suddenly turned, smashing into the nearest black pillar. That black pillar that seemed to connect heaven and earth immediately tilted, and the seal was broken on the spot. Yingguan shot out and immediately arrived outside the sentry post. With a clean punch, he blasted open the light screen of the formation. The light screen of the formation, which was only used to defend against the peak of the outer building realm, was blasted open by the power of a divine, rival realm expert. The light screen closed immediately after it was broken, but Yingguan had already turned into a streak of dark green light, disappearing into the horizon. Only Yulong was left on the spot. Even at the very beginning, Yingguan had never thought of running away. He didn't even look at the black pillar. From the very beginning, he had been attacking, and attacking. He left Yulong with the impression that he was a genius, but crazy, courageous, and fearless of death. Since he dared to fight a divine, a rival realm expert, at the outer building realm, it was natural for him to try to kill Yulong. How could King Qingguang not have this bit of pride? Moreover, he was almost killed by him. How could King Qinguang not hate him? With power, how could he not want revenge? But what made Yu Lung miscalculated again was that Yin Guan actually ran away without a fight and didn't even test him. However, Jiang Wang knew that this was Yin Guan. He didn't care about other people's evaluation of him. He didn't care what methods he used or who he would hurt. He only cared about his goal. He took on the responsibility of the leader, risking his life to kill King Taishan, but he didn't boast about it. Instead, he threatened to kill King Dushi. Jiang Wang felt that he was unscrupulous, using his companion's life to escape, but he didn't give any explanation. Of course, he wasn't great. He didn't choose to run away, and instead risked his life, because his first goal was never to escape from Qi territory. It was to become a divine, arrival realm expert. Now that this goal had been achieved, he immediately moved on to the next goal, which was to escape from Qi territory. It was that simple. A person like Yin Guan wasn't interested in the glory of killing a divine, arrival realm expert. Fame and wealth were not worth mentioning to him. Yu Lung stood in the middle of the cast iron black pillar he had set up, silent. At that moment, he showed some signs of old age. Although a divine arrival realm expert wouldn't have the possibility of aging before death. Jiang Wang was thinking about how to persuade this divine arrival realm expert, or if it was better to pretend that he didn't see it. Suddenly, his vision blurred, and he saw a blind old man holding a white lantern. He was shocked. It was the night watchman he met in the ruins of the withered yard. Different from Jiang Wang's reaction, Yu Lung frowned, probably unwilling to let more people see his failure this time, but it was already a fact. A divine arrival realm expert wouldn't lose the courage to face reality. You're late. King Qinguang has already escaped. The blind watchman also didn't expect that two assassins would run away at the same time when they were trying to capture a mere assassin organization behind closed doors. He was delayed at sea for a while, allowing the corner king to escape. When he sensed this place again, King Qinguang had already escaped. After a moment of silence, he finally asked two words, divine arrival. Yes. Yu Lung's voice was somewhat bitter. He broke through in front of me. Young man, you're amazing. The night watchman sighed, holding the white lantern, suddenly turned and looked at Jiang Wang with his lifeless eyes. This scene was very frightening. Jiang Qingyang, you're the pride of the Qi. Do you have the confidence to kill this person for the Qi in the future? Chapter 585. What did he know? This was the most important question in Jiang Wang's heart. However, when he recalled his actions along the way, Jiang Wang thought that he had put on a good show. He was always vigilant and did not make any mistakes because of his carelessness. In other words, the blind watchman was at most suspicious. However, was it necessary to push Tianjiao away from the country because of this suspicion? The answer was obvious. Then, back to the question itself. The blind old man was actually asking if Jiang Wang was willing to join the watchmen. As long as Jiang Wang answered that he was confident, he would immediately be trained by this terrifying master and even have the possibility of being passed on his legacy. Of course, this possibility was not high now. The watchman might be the one with the highest loyalty among all the yamens in Qi. However, the benefits of joining the watchman were obvious, but where were the rules? Such a yamen that did not easily appear in front of people must have strict rules. After joining the watchman, could he still keep his own property? Was it possible to communicate with the aristocratic families? This was a serious matter. Jiang Wang could not make a decision at this time. At least, he had to understand the watchman first before making a decision. The Qi has many strong masters. No matter how strong a villain is, there will be opponents. Jiang Wang was neither servile nor overbearing. If we are in the same realm, I am confident that I can face any opponent. However, I have just opened up my first prefecture. It is too arrogant to say that I am confident that I can kill Yin Guan. His words did not erase his confidence, but he was very clear-headed. Yu Lung also said, "It is my fault that we were not able to kill King Qinguang this time. However, Constable Zhang's contribution should not be erased. I will ask for a decree to promote him to a 4th grade blue medal." This was to express his attitude. He wanted to snatch Jiang Wang away and keep him in the blue metal system. Today, Jiang Wang's talent had been recognized. When they met at the ruins of the withered yard, the blind watchman did not send out such an invitation. If it was someone else, Yulong would probably not help him fight for the right to choose. Jiang Wang's future was worth betting on. The blind watchman did not say anything. This was an expert with a clear mind. Although he was blind, it didn't stop him from seeing the world clearly. Jiang Wang's temperament was unusually calm. He did not have the arrogance of a young man who had achieved success. He was not the kind of young man who could be aroused by a few words. On the other hand, Yulong did not gain anything this time and even lost half of his reputation. Perhaps his mentality would change. The world at the mines I saw wasn't as colorful as the world seen with the naked eye, but perhaps it was more concrete and direct. The white lantern swayed gently. The blind night watchman turned around and disappeared. Yulong hurriedly performed hand seals and collected those black iron pillars and the chains that connected to the void. Jiang Wang stood to the side without saying a word. He waited for him to finish and expressed his proper respect. "You know this person?" Yulong suddenly asked. "We've met once before," Jiang Wang said honestly. "Everyone says that you, Jiang Qingyang, have no roots. However, the Zheng Genjia strongly supports you. Even Li Zhengshu, with his lofty personality, has said good things about you in front of His Majesty several times. Now, this person also has a favorable impression of you." Yulong looked at him with a faint smile. "Who is your master?" This was the first time Jiang Wang heard Li Zhengshu say good things about him in front of Emperor Qi. He was indeed a gentleman with the demeanor of a famous scholar. He had said good things about Jiang Wang in front of Emperor Qi, but he never let him know. However, he got along well with Li Fengyao and Li Longquan. It was natural for Li Zhengshu to love him because of his love for him. Faced with Yulong's probing, Jiang Wang paused for a moment and replied, "I've been pondering on my own all this time. I don't have any master." It was very difficult to lie in front of someone like Yulong. Therefore, Jiang Wang did not hide his "I don't want to say" attitude. His answer was very perfunctory. Yulong did not pursue the matter further. His sudden desire to take in a disciple also faded. He shook his head and suddenly sighed. "The latecomer is formidable. Perhaps I should have returned to Sanqing Palace back then." Jiang Wang was naturally not narcissistic enough to think that the latecomer that Yulong was talking about was him. Only Yin Guan, who had just become a god, had the right to be called formidable by the arrestor god. He even had the thought of returning to Sanqing Palace. The sacred ground of legalism was known as Sanqing Palace. It was actually a collective name for the three palaces of law. They were called Zuantian, Judi, and Xingren. The Sanqing Palace that people usually referred to was actually the Xingren Palace. This was because only the disciples of this palace could roam the world and become officials in various countries. It was also the disciples of this palace that often hunted down people who violated the law. Sanqing Palace did not adhere to the factions and countries of its disciples. It only had rules in terms of ideology and did not make any political demands. Yulong's master in his early years was from the proper Sanqing Palace. He learned a lot from his master and could be considered to have surpassed him. However, he had never been to Sanqing Palace. Firstly, he could not go to the sacred ground of legalism whenever he wanted to. Secondly, Sanqing Palace was not enthusiastic about recruiting disciples. As long as they did not violate the rules of Sanqing Palace, they could go anywhere and join any faction. Even if the disciples served their own masters and killed each other, they would not be restricted. Actually, with Yulong's cultivation, he could totally return to Sanqing Palace and become a proper grandmaster in the sacred ground of legalism. He would study the classics, bury himself in the inheritance, and expand the boundaries of law, as long as he was willing to let go of everything in Qi. Even Qi could not force him to stay. It was just like how, if a disciple of Sanqing Palace wanted to be a Qi official and did not return to Sanqing Palace would not interfere. He should have been able to improve more in Sanqing Palace. This was because it was the sacred ground of legalism and the root of his path. However, Yulong chose to stay in Qi. This was because in his heart, his identity as a person of Qi was higher than his identity as a disciple of legalism. However, when he was in Qi, he could not avoid worldly matters. Just like this time, he was invited out of the mountains by Zhang Shi. He had been in seclusion for so long, but the truth realm was still out of his reach. The god arrestor of the generation did not manage to catch the thief. Instead, King Qingguang stepped on him and used him to become a godly arrival. Although Yulong's lifespan was still sufficient, he could not help but sigh at his old age. However, Jiangwang would not take his sigh seriously. With Yulong's arrival realm strength and his many years of hard work in the inspection office, he had won the title of God Arrestor. He would definitely be treated well in Qi. He had been working hard in Qi his entire life. He was not someone who could be left behind just because he wanted to. Jiangwang did not express his opinion on Yulong's sigh. Yulong did not need him to express his opinion either. He calmed himself down and said, "No one would have expected King Qingguang to have such courage and talent. However, there is nothing wrong with your information. The Qi's blue medal has always been fair in its rewards and punishments. The reward that you deserve will not be less. Your rank 4 blue medal will be given to you when I return to Linzi. As for the secret technique of the inner mansion realm that suits your current cultivation." He sized up Jiangwang and said meaningfully, "If you're in a hurry, I can make the decision to give you a technique first." Someone like Yulong could see that Jiangwang's temporary blue medal was just to make it easier for him to leave the country. However, he did not give Jiangwang a hard time like he was worried about in Beijing. Instead, he took the opportunity to help Jiangwang turn his temporary position into a permanent one. Was it a blue medal? Or was it a night watchman? Or was it entering the army? Or was it a prefectural governor? There were many choices. Although they were all in Qi, there was no difference for Jiangwang and Qi. However, it was different for the higher-ups in these places. It was easy to get manpower, but difficult to get in Tianjiao. Jiangwang had shown enough potential to support a faction in the future. Chapter 586. When he was in Linzi, as soon as his battle with Lei Zhanqian ended, Huaying Palace Master Jiang Wuyo personally came forward to recruit him. Many forces held back their thoughts. Jiangwang did not know how many forces were interested in him. As for Huaying Palace Master Jiang Wuyo's recruitment, it was very normal to him. After all, when he was in the Seven Stars Valley, Palace Master Mental Cultivation Palace Master Jiang Wuxia had already recruited him with extremely generous conditions. Therefore, Jiangwang did not have a deep understanding of his current position in Qi. When he was in Beijing, he did not even dare to say a word and quietly ran away. He was afraid that his vague behavior of holding a blue medal would make the big shots in the blue medal system feel disgusted. But now, the night watchman had already invited him, and Yulong was so friendly. It was enough for him to realize that he was very popular in Qi. He thought for a while and did not reject Yulong's good intentions. He immediately thanked him. Then Jiangwang will thank Constable Sir. Now that he had rushed back to Linzi, he would randomly choose a secret technique from the National Treasury. At most, Chenggung Sheng could make this random choice closer to a high-quality secret technique, but it was not very meaningful. Now that Yulong had offered to teach him, it must be a legalist secret technique. This could further tie Jiangwang to the blue medal. After all, at least 1/3 of the people into Qi's blue medal cultivated legalism techniques. Although Jiangwang did not plan to switch to legalism, the secret technique that Yulong personally taught him would not be too bad. Therefore, no matter how he thought about it, he had no reason to reject, unless he wanted to cut ties with the blue medal and did not want to continue being a blue medal constable. Also, there was another benefit to accepting Yulong's good intentions. It would make Lin Yuxi more obedient and not blindly suspect people for no reason. Jiangwang's decision was very decisive. Yulong was also very straightforward. He immediately passed down the legalism technique of the inner palace level. It was the chain that seemed to have been formed from the void during the battle with Yingguan. It was called Imprisoned Body, and it was one of the 10 most famous chains of legalism. It was actually a technique of the outer building realm, but Yulong had simplified it and changed the method of exerting force so that it could be used in a battle of the intermansion realm. However, compared to the shackles, Jiang Wang was actually more interested in the black iron pillar that seemed to pierce through heaven and earth. However, he knew that it was impossible to pass it to him. After teaching Jiang Wang how to use the shackling chains, Yulong pointed out some details before he left. As for the secret technique that Jiang Wang deserved, he would receive it on his behalf. As for whether he would give it to his juniors or trade it with someone else, that was Yulong's own business. It had nothing to do with Jiang Wang. Of course, Yulong had expressed his goodwill. However, this was essentially just a trade. There were no emotional factors involved. Jiang Wang accepted Yulong's goodwill and decided to temporarily join the blue metal team to gain some benefits. However, it didn't mean that he would be fixed in the blue metal system in the future. Based on what he knew, the blue metal constable was at most a commandant of the Northern Yamen. Although the position of commandant of the Northern Yamen was very important, and there was a lot of room for advancement, Jiang Wang admitted that he didn't have Zhang Shi's ability to mediate between the various factions and firmly hold the Qi Emperor's trust. After glancing at the distant outpost, Jiang Wang directly changed his direction and headed southwest of the Qi Empire. The caravan that had gone to the Rong Nation had already been sent back. There was no need for him to make a trip to the Rong Nation and put on an act. He might as well head directly to the Xiankong Temple. He had reached a tacit understanding with Yulong. At least within the blue metal, there shouldn't be anyone who would make things difficult for him. In the Forest Ocean Origin world, Jiang Wang had promised Guan Yin that he would send his monk robes back to the Xiankong Temple. However, after returning to Linzi City, many things happened one after another, so it was delayed. Taking advantage of this trip to the Yun Nation to visit and in, he might as well do everything that needed to be done. Jiang Wang was alone, so there was no reason that he couldn't leave the country. In the southwest of the Qi Empire, there was a country called Su. After annexing the Yang Nation, the Qi Empire's map protruded to the northwest. The Su Nation was only in the southwest direction after setting off from the Yang Nation. Actually, compared to the entire Qi Empire, the Su Nation should be in the west. Just from the name alone, the Su Nation seemed to be related to the Yang Nation. In fact, there was indeed a connection. It wasn't just the Yang and Su nations. In the southwest of the Qi Empire, there was a country called Zhao. In the southeast, there was a country called Chang. In fact, these four countries were originally split from a single country. The overlord of the east before the Qi Empire was called Yang. Mo Valley was the legendary place where the sun rose. The Su Nation was named after this, which showed its great ambition. When the Su Nation was at its peak, it had completely unified the eastern region. To the northwest, it had conquered the endless quicksand. To the southwest, it had conquered the Jianfeng Mountain, a famous mountain in the Xia Nation. To the west, it had conquered the central region and competed with the Jing Nation. Unfortunately, it declined after reaching its peak. The dynasty collapsed overnight, and the empire became nothing. The entire country was split into 9 countries. At that time, they were called the 9 Sunrise Nations. They were all from the same source. However, each of them said that they were the old Yang Zhengshua, but in fact they were only considered side branches. The real Su Nation's imperial bloodline had long been wiped out by themselves. Later, with the rise of the Qi Empire and the revival of the Emperor Wu, the Qi Empire became the overlord of the eastern region. The Su Nation was gradually forgotten. Of the 9 Sunrise Nations, only 4 nations remained. Speaking of which, among the 9 Sunrise Nations, the Yang Nation was the most powerful. It occupied the largest portion of the Su Nation's legacy, so it was named Yang. However, it was also because of this that the Qi Empire was most afraid of it. After eating it for many years, it finally swallowed it. The Buddhist land under the rule of the Xiankong Temple was in the south of the Su Nation. After entering the Su Nation, Jiang Wang encountered a ferocious beast tied in a small town. Looking at the ferocious beast that had no sense of reason, he actually felt a little uncomfortable. After staying in the peaceful Qi Empire for so long, he almost forgot what other nations were like. Jiang Wang pulled out his sword and helped the townspeople defend the town. But he didn't follow the tracks of the ferocious beast to destroy the beast nest. He might be thanked for protecting the townspeople. If he destroyed the beast nest, he would be hunted down. Now, he already knew what ferocious beasts meant to a small nation. It was the blood of many innocent people, but at the same time, it was an indispensable resource. The townspeople who were saved were very grateful. They asked for the name of their savior and said that they would build a shrine for him. Jiang Wang didn't say a word and left in a hurry. He wanted to tell them that the existence of those ferocious beasts was tacitly allowed and even condoned by the rulers of their nations. However, would this situation change after he told them? It would only make these ordinary people fall into despair. Therefore, he didn't say anything in the end. He couldn't bear the gratitude of those people. It seemed that all the cultivators in power in the world had a tacit agreement to hide the origin of the ferocious beasts from the people under their rule. Some of the later cultivators learned about it early, while some learned about it late. However, in the end, they all maintained that dreadful tacit agreement. Perhaps they were willing or unwilling, but in the end, they all condensed into one figure. Doi Wenmei, who had broken through 5 prefectures and pulled out Yuhing Peak, walked down Yuhing Peak in a daze after learning the truth. Jiang Wang once regarded this as the greatest injustice. However, why did he become a member of this tacit agreement? He asked himself. However, he didn't have an answer. P.S. Where does the truth of the world reflect? I think it's in its customs, food, shelter, and transportation, as well as its history and legends. Chapter 587. At night, Jiang Wang stayed in an ordinary inn. He couldn't miss his morning and evening classes. With his current strength, he wouldn't be in any danger even if he stayed in the wilderness. However, he had lived in a city for a long time and was more used to staying in places like inns. After finishing the cleaning of the inner mansion, he sensed a presence outside the door. Who is it? Jiang Wang stood up with a sword in his hand. It's me, Ying Guan, who deliberately leaked his presence, pushed the door open and walked in. I thought you would have left long ago. Jiang Wang let go of the sword hilt. She wasn't far from here. If a strong master passed by, would anyone in Su country dare to say anything? Ying Guan had just done something big in Qi, but he still dared to stay in Su country, which was close to Qi. Jiang Wang admired him. Where should I go? The doorless hell has always been active in the eastern region. Ying Guan said casually. He was much calmer than Jiang Wang, as if he wasn't worried about being hunted down by Qi at all. He closed the door, took out the invisible robe, and put on the table in front of Jiang Wang. Besides, I don't have the habit of borrowing and not returning. When Jiang Wang caught the invisible robe, he said, I cast a secret spell on this invisible robe, which can help you avoid the detection of Shenlin cultivators. But the effect can only last 3 times. It's your reward. He looked at Jiang Wang and said casually, Do you want to try it? Jiang Wang was stunned. Then there are only 2 times left. Will you cast it on me again after I try it? No. Ying Guan's answer was straightforward. He had already given him a reward that he thought was reasonable, so he wouldn't waste any more time. Jiang Wang obviously knew his answer. He just shrugged and put the invisible robe back in his storage box. If it were Ying Guan himself, he would definitely try it once, even if it only worked twice, to confirm the specific effect. For an assassin who walked on the edge of life and death, he had to be suspicious to ensure his survival. Ying Guan poured himself a cup of tea. Trusting an assassin isn't a smart choice. He spoke to Jiang Wang much more casually and naturally than before. The two of them were more familiar with each other than before. I don't believe you. I just believe in my own judgment. Jiang Wang smiled. You don't have to use this to deceive me. Moreover, I will decide when to use the stealth cloak. It's meaningless for you to tamper with it. I admire you more and more. Ying Guan had to admit that Jiang Wang was indeed smart. He took a sip of tea and said, How about it? Are you interested in joining No Door to Hell? I can make you a Yama King. You'll wear a mask, and no one will know your true identity. Furthermore, you'll be in a position of great authority. King Biansheng, King Taishan, and King Dushi. The resources and channels of hell are open to you. How about King Pingding? It seemed that this was his true motive. Qi and his men had suffered heavy casualties and were in urgent need of reinforcements. As the leader, Yingguan naturally had to personally recruit Yamakings. Although Jiang Wang was only a cultivator of a single prefecture, he possessed remarkable abilities and had a bright future ahead of him. Now that they were short on manpower, he was a good choice. Jiang Wang shook his head. Forget it. It's not very auspicious. Yingguan was somewhat speechless. After thinking about it carefully, he really couldn't refute this. Of course, he also understood that a cultivator with a bright future like Jiang Wang was unlikely to be willing to join No Door to Hell. He also didn't have any intention of forcing him to join them. Jiang Wang took the initiative to change the topic. Actually, Yulong has already given me my reward. You don't have to worry about it. That's Qi's reward, not No Door to Hell's. Yingguan said. In his words, he subconsciously compared No Door to Hell to Qi. It was clear that he had high aspirations. Jiang Wang had already accepted the reward. He wasn't embarrassed in the first place. He was just casually changing the topic. He thought for a moment. Actually, I have a question for you. I can't guarantee that I'll answer. Yingguan said. It doesn't involve you or No Door to Hell. Jiang Wang organized his words and asked, what I want to ask you is, do you know how ferocious beasts were created? Yingguan used to be the city lord of the 27 lower cities of Yunation. Of course, he didn't have any real power. Later, he became the leader of No Door to Hell. He killed this and that every day. Presumably, he knew a lot about the secrets of the cultivation world. I didn't pay attention to it. Yingguan shook his head and said, if you want to know, why don't you go and see for yourself? Go and see for myself. Jiang Wang was somewhat hesitant. Yingguan looked outside the window. I still have some time. Then let's set off now. Jiang Wang immediately walked outside. Yingguan was speechless. Jiang Wang wouldn't forget that when he was at Alioth Peak and the beast nest was in danger of being destroyed, the state minister of Zhuang Nation, Duru Hui, immediately came to take charge. The Sioux Nation should also attach great importance to a place with important resources like the ferocious beast nest. He was just an inner palace cultivator who had just opened his first palace. He wasn't arrogant enough to think that he could conquer Sioux Nation. Now that Yingguan extended his leg, if he didn't hug it now, when would he? The city where Jiang Wang stopped to rest was called Songtao City. It got its name because when one looked out from the highest point of the city, they could see a vast pine forest. When the wind blew, the branches and leaves would undulate like waves. Although the pine forest was dense and beautiful, one could only admire it from afar. This was because many ferocious beasts lived in this huge pine forest. The gate of Songtao City that faced the pine forest was closed all year round. The city guard were stationed outside the forest to protect the safety of the people in the city. However, the pine forest was too vast and couldn't be completely surrounded. Therefore, ferocious beasts would often run out and wreak havoc on the people in other directions. There might have been many tragic stories that happened there, but Jiang Wang knew that the deaths and injuries of the people in those directions were actually tacitly permitted by the imperial court of the Sioux Nation. Jiang Wang and Yingguan bypassed the military camp and sneaked into the pine forest from a direction where no one was watching. The two of them flew close to the ground and didn't make any noise. With the newly ascended Divine Ascension Stage expert Yingguan by their side, they didn't have to worry about their safety. Even if they were to run into the experts of the Sioux Nation, it wouldn't be a problem for them to escape. After all, they weren't breaking into the Sioux Nation's imperial palace. This pine forest is much larger than the entire Songtao City. Yingguan sighed softly. His voice rang out nearby, but it didn't spread out. His tone was filled with surprise. To Jiang Wang, although this pine forest was vast, it was far from enough to compare to the forest ocean origin world. It wasn't enough to move him at all. Yingguan was strong, but he probably wasn't fated to enter any of the secret realms in the world. This was because all the powerful secret realms already had owners and were in order. He didn't have a proper identity to sneak in. This was one of the drawbacks of not having a powerful faction to rely on. Yeah, it's pretty big, Jiang Wang said half-heartedly. Yingguan glanced at him. and suddenly disappeared. Something had happened. If you weren't satisfied with my half-hearted response, you could have told me. The great King Qingguang is so childish. Jiang Wang shouted angrily in his mind. Although he was shocked, he didn't lose his composure. He silently scuttled to the top of a tree and hid himself among the leaves. Then he heard the sound of branches being stepped on. Two people in black robes walked over from afar while talking. Chapter 588. These two black-robed men were probably the guards of the beast nest in the pinewood forest. They were casually chatting as if they were discussing the famous figures of Sioux country's younger generation. Jiang Wang didn't listen carefully. He held his breath the entire time, paying close attention to these two people. If he was discovered, he would immediately take action to restrain them. Speaking of which, hiding in a tree whenever there was a situation didn't suit his current cultivation level. However, he might as well not use those shallow concealment Dao techniques he had grasped. He would expose himself by revealing the Dao technique's fluctuations. The concealment robe's 3 effects could be used against divine or rival realm experts. If he used it now, it would inevitably be used against him. Hiding in the red makeup mirror was a better choice. However, Jiang Wang didn't trust Yin Guan enough to expose all of his trump cards. After all, he didn't agree to join the doorless hell. Even if they joined the gateless hell, the positions of the Yama Kings had just been vacated. There was nothing wrong with being careful. Moreover, at this time, he could bear the risk of being discovered. Jiang Wang thought to himself that it was time to prepare a concealment Dao technique. In fact, he already had this idea long ago. However, after obtaining the concealment robe, he completely let it go. Now that he thought about it, although the concealment robe was useful, he had to consider different situations. He didn't know if it was Jiang Wang's luck or the two guards' luck. They didn't seem to think that someone would sneak into the pinewood forest, so they didn't observe their surroundings. Jiang Wang was right above their heads, but no one looked up. After the two guards left, Yin Guan appeared again. Jiang Wang couldn't see what technique he used from beginning to end. The gap between their cultivation levels was temporarily widened. What a surprise! You don't even have a decent concealment Dao technique. Yin Guan, who had a handsome face, spoke very straightforwardly. He was not pretty at all. Of course, with his strength, he didn't need to be good at talking. "Oh, I rarely need to hide," Jiang Wang casually replied. He was mocking Yin Guan for being an assassin and always hiding. It was only because he was becoming more familiar with Yin Guan that he would occasionally joke about him. Yin Guan was also stunned by the mockery. After all, not everyone had the guts to joke with King Qingguang. "I originally wanted to pass on my unique concealment technique to you, but it seems like you don't need it," Yin Guan said indifferently. Jiang Wang curled his lips. He didn't believe it at all. A person like Yin Guan would definitely not show excessive kindness and act as a good person. If one day he really wanted to teach Jiang Wang a unique concealment technique, he would definitely need Jiang Wang to do something worthy of this technique. Therefore, Yin Guan was also joking with him right now. He was waiting for him to apologize and flatter him before coldly rejecting him. However, it was probably because he hadn't joked with anyone for a long time that he was a little unrealistic and stiff. Even though Jiang Wang could see it clearly in his heart, he still pretended to be shocked and cooperated. "Actually, I often need to hide." Yin Guan glanced at him indifferently and said, "Keep up." Obviously, Jiang Wang's performance was too superficial, which made him lose interest in joking. Smart people were dull like this because it was too easy to see through the truth. Sometimes, even if they wanted to coax themselves, they couldn't do it. They followed the two guards into the depths of the pine forest from a distance. There were no surprises or dangers along the way. The methods of a divine descent cultivator were not something these two guards could detect. In this pine forest, vicious beasts could be seen everywhere. However, all the vicious beasts they encountered along the way, even when they suddenly attacked each other, all turned a blind eye to the two guards. Vicious beasts didn't have any intelligence. They only had killing instincts, but humans still had many ways to control them. For example, the items on the two guards or Yin Guan's more direct and straightforward power suppression. For a long distance, it was a primitive environment where vicious beasts lived. However, when they reached the center of the pine forest, Jiang Wang saw man-made traces. There was a huge underground cave entrance. Hordes of vicious beasts were heading underground through the cave entrance. The vicious beasts that only had bloodthirsty instincts were very well behaved at this time, very following the rules. 5 cultivators holding special whips stood outside the cave entrance. Occasionally, a vicious beast would become restless and they would lash out with the whips. After being whipped, the vicious beasts would immediately be tamed. Some kind of restriction was probably added to these whips. Jiang Wang noticed that the vicious beasts' auras were very strong. They were far more ferocious than the other vicious beasts scattered in the pine forest. It was probably because they had been carefully selected that they were driven here. The 2 guards and the cultivators holding the whips exchanged a few words. After all the vicious beasts had entered the cave, they followed in. 2 choices, Ingguan said indifferently. I kill them, or you knock them out. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiang Wang had already formed seal. From the void, a pitch-black chain stretched out. It was as fast as lightning. With a turn, it tied up the 5 cultivators holding the whips. It was the legalist secret technique passed down by Yulong. It was one of the 10 great chains, the imprisoning chains. Jiang Wang leaped forward and directly suppressed them with his strength, forcibly sealing their Tao energy and 5 senses. During the whole process, these cultivators couldn't resist at all. You've acknowledged him as your master? Ingguan obviously recognized Yulong's secret technique. No. Jiang Wang waved his hand. The blue metal reward was not returned to Lindsay for convenience's sake. Ingguan didn't say anything else and directly walked into the underground cave. In the past, if he knew that the vicious beasts were created by humans, he would have killed them. It was very likely that Jiang Wang would have wanted to kill these guards. But now he already knew that the vicious beast nests were resources related to the creation of the Meridian unlocking pill. The cultivators on guard duty were only following orders. In fact, they were doing such a thing with a will of loyalty and responsibility. It was very difficult to determine right and wrong. Innocent might not be innocent, but there didn't seem to be a damned reason. When Ingguan mentioned the 2 choices, Jiang Wang subconsciously made a move. It might have been a choice of conscience. The 2 of them walked along the underground entrance. From time to time, a brazier lit up the path ahead. Such a scene made Jiang Wang think of the underground cave in the Void Continent. He thought of the fire of celebration and the star beasts in the Nether Heaven. He even suddenly wondered if there was a Nether Heaven in the depths of the modern realm. There were a lot of greedy eyes hiding behind them. Finally, following this group of vicious beasts, they walked into a huge cave. Most of the space in the cave was covered by a large formation with complicated runes. The vicious beasts walked into the formation one by one and lay on the ground obediently. An intermansion cultivator stood guard outside the formation. 2 guards approached and reported something in a low voice. Ingguan and Jiang Wang hid outside the cave and didn't follow in, because the inside of the cave was very spacious. There was no place to hide. Jiang Wang looked at him. The meaning of his question was very clear. What should they do next? Should they just barge in? Ingguan didn't speak. He only raised 2 fingers. A wisp of green flame flashed in front of Jiang Wang's eyes. Jiang Wang's vision blurred. The things he saw changed. He obtained a second perspective outside of his own. He saw the situation in the huge cave. He also saw the face of that intermansion cultivator from Sioux country. He saw the specific situation of the large formation. He also saw those ruthless, vicious beasts lying quietly in the formation. It was so clear. This was the perspective of one of the guards. What a miraculous method. But Jiang Wang didn't have time to express his amazement, because in the next moment, he saw 2 cultivators pushing a prisoner carriage over from the other side of the cave. An old man was locked up in the prisoner carriage. No, he wasn't human. Most parts of him were exactly the same as a human, but there was a single black horn on his forehead. He was a demon. Chapter 589. Demonic beasts were once the masters of this world, but that was already a matter of ancient times. Among all the great eras, the ancient era was the longest. Its beginning was already untraceable, and even the time was immeasurable. Perhaps only the most ancient Taoist sects still had scattered records, but Taoist sects had never made this information public. But many people knew the end of the ancient era. The symbol of the end of the ancient era was that humans drove demonic beasts out of the world and became the masters of the modern world. Then they experienced the long antiquity age, the middle age, the late age, and the present. Demonic beasts were almost nowhere to be seen in the modern world. Jiang Wang had cultivated all the way to the present, from a nameless wandering little Taoist to the current inner mansion, De Qi, and Tianjiao, but this was the first time he truly saw demonic beasts. Compared to suddenly seeing demonic beasts, even Yin Guan's miraculous method of borrowing the perspective was not so surprising. Could it be that demonic beasts still existed in the modern world? Could it be that demonic beasts had never disappeared? The prisoner carriage pushed the single-horned old demonic beasts into the great formation. Looking at the beasts crawling in the formation, the old demonic beast's fear was very obvious. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? He didn't speak the language of any country Jiang Wang knew, but the meaning of each word was clear. It was a Tao language. It was the same voice as in the great illusionary realm. The inner mansion cultivator guarding the cave frowned. Why does every demonic beast ask this kind of question? Isn't it clear what we want to do? The guard standing beside him smiled and replied, "Demonic beasts aren't stupid without intelligence, but sometimes it might be better to give up thinking. Fear makes him deceive himself. If he pretends not to know, some things might not have happened." This guard seemed to be quite knowledgeable. Even the inner mansion cultivator looked at him with some surprise. He smiled embarrassedly. The great general once said something like this when he came for an inspection. The old demonic beast in the prisoner carriage didn't understand what they were saying, but the laughter of the humans made him even more afraid. He was trapped in the prisoner carriage, caught in a herd of beasts, and these people were talking about him. If you want to commit murder, you can go to our general, our king, and our warriors. He struggled and shouted, "What kind of ability is it to bully us old and weak women and children?" The palace realm cultivator from Sioux country sneered, "How can there be old, weak women and children in the demon race?" The communication between the two parties was destined to be fruitless because they could understand the language of the demon, but the demon did not understand what he was saying. His fear grew stronger and stronger. It could be seen that the aged muscles of this demon clan old man were stretched taut and stiff. At this moment, the prisoner carriage had already pushed into the center of the formation. The two cultivators pushing the cart retreated out of the array at almost the same speed as they fled, all the way until they reached the side of the inner mansion stage cultivator. The timing is just right. The inner mansion realm cultivator of the Sioux nation quickly formed hand seals and didn't waste a single second. The array suddenly lit up. Countless dark red lines crawled along the ground like a spider web, quickly connecting all the ferocious beasts together. All of the dark red lines ended at the single-horned old man of the demon race. The demon immediately let out a blood-curdling scream that shook the entire cave. His body was shriveling at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, Jiang Wang saw a ferocious beast suddenly stand up from its prone position. The pure ruthlessness and bloodthirstiness in its eyes had actually dissipated. What was even more shocking was that something was faintly being nurtured inside this ferocious beast. It was a Tao vein. Jiang Wang quickly recognized that it was a Tao vein that was slowly forming. In other words, this ferocious beast had already become a demon beast at this moment. Everything had an answer. At this moment, the second half of the questions he had at Alioth Peak were answered. The process of wild beasts evolving into ferocious beasts required the wild beasts to kill each other and be catalyzed by the relevant array. At that time at Alioth Peak, Jiang Wang had already witnessed this process. The ferocious beasts that were catalyzed had to wreak havoc everywhere and even kill humans, further developing their ferocious nature. Only after reaching a certain level would a ferocious beast have the qualifications to evolve to the next step. Just as Miaoyu had guessed, ferociousness is a necessary element for a demon beast. Killing is a certain process that must be experienced. The next step was for the ferocious beast to evolve into a demon beast. What this process required was the catalyzed array before them, and more importantly, a living demon beast. With demon beasts, there would also be meridian unlocking pills. The second generation of demon beasts that were domesticated would not be able to possess Dao veins. This might be a self-preservation method that existed in the origins of the races. Since demon beasts that were reared in captivity were meaningless, naturally, no one would keep demon beasts in captivity. However, relying solely on wild demon beasts was naturally unable to satisfy the cultivation needs of the human race. No matter how many demon beasts there were, they would be wiped out sooner or later. Therefore, the method that Jiang Wang and Ying Guan saw was developed. Through the multiple transformations from wild beasts to ferocious beasts and then to demon beasts, it directly catalyzed demon beasts. As long as wild beasts existed, there would be no end to demon beasts. Putting aside good and evil, right and wrong, this method itself was definitely an earth-shattering creation. It could even be said that it laid the foundation for the prosperity of the cultivation world. Because it popularized the meridian unlocking pill, Jiang Wang then thought that if ordinary meridian unlocking pills could be obtained this way, then those priceless earth essence great pills and heaven essence great pills that could only be found by chance, could they be made by extracting the Dao veins of demon beasts or even powerful demon beasts? But where would they go to capture demon beasts in a modern realm? Where would they go to capture them? The forest ocean origin world, the void continent. Jiang Wang suddenly thought of these two worlds. Perhaps there existed a world where demon beasts lived, and human cultivators would occasionally descend there to capture demon beasts. Then what about the powers and countries that didn't have the ability to capture demon beasts or were dissatisfied with the number of demon beasts they captured? Jiang Wang then thought of the cultivator who had secretly kidnapped Bei Nu at the banks of Clear River. He couldn't help but be shocked. Water beasts and demon beasts were too similar. They were both extremely similar to humans, and they also retained some of the characteristics of their respective races. Jiang Wang felt that he was vaguely approaching the truth of history. He was only a final bit away from the fog that needed to be blown away by the wind of knowledge. At this moment, the one-horned demon beast in the Great Formation stopped screaming. He was lying on his stomach in the prison carriage, dying. In the entire Great Formation, nearly one-third of the ferocious beasts stood up and transformed into demon beasts. Even more ferocious beasts closed their eyes forever and died silently. Good harvest! The Intermansion Realm cultivator of Sioux Country nodded in satisfaction. His gaze swept past the demon beasts and landed on the prison carriage. Take him down for treatment and recuperation. After he recovers, he should be able to hold on for another round. What a pity, he lamented to the guards beside him. They gave us such old and weak demon beasts. They won't be able to hold on for more than a few rounds. One of the guards replied, Chi and those blood-sucking beasts won't let us take advantage of them. Even if they gave us strong demon beasts, they would definitely ask us to offer them more meridian unlocking pills. Just like this, the cultivators of Sioux Country cursed and swore at Chi. It seemed that they had accumulated resentment for a long time. In the gloomy underground cave, they cursed at him. Yingguan deliberately glanced at Jiang Wang. Jiang Wang's face was expressionless, but in his heart, he finally solved the question that had been puzzling him for a long time. Why were there no ferocious beasts in Qi? Why were the ordinary people in Qi able to go out into the wild freely? Why were the ordinary people in Qi able to have excursions? That was because all the dangers were transferred to these small countries. Qi's meridian unlocking pills came from the tributes of these small countries. Chapter 590. Did the Zhuang country also need to pay tribute? As a subordinate country, they had to pay tribute to Jing country. Powerful countries would capture demons and distribute them to different smaller countries. The small countries built beast nests and raised ferocious beasts. Then, they used demons as raw materials to catalyze demon beasts. Then, they extracted their Tao meridians and refined them into meridian opening pills. Then, they offered a portion of the gains to the large countries. Thus, the meridian opening pill system was formed. In fact, the large countries also used this system to silently control the small countries. There was a very direct inference. Ferocious beasts had to experience killing humans in order to grow. Otherwise, it was impossible to explain why the small countries would, to a certain extent, allow their citizens to be sacrificed. If the ferocious beasts only needed to kill, then they could just drive more wild beasts to kill. It could be that this method of catalyzing demon beasts had an unavoidable flaw. It could also be caused by other reasons. However, this problem should be unsolvable. Otherwise, with how big the world was and how many geniuses there were, it wouldn't be possible for them to sit and watch until now. Therefore, the process of nurturing ferocious beasts was unavoidably stained with the blood of their citizens. However, could the small countries that didn't have the ability to hunt demons refuse? Could they refuse? The large countries didn't directly kill people, but the small countries would always lose blood. The two Sioux country cultivators who brought the prisoner carriage walked into the great array again. They pushed the prisoner carriage out and prepared to send it somewhere for treatment and recuperation. When the prisoner carriage passed by the inner mansion realm cultivator, the one-horned old man, who was already on the verge of death, suddenly opened his eyes and glared at Qin Lai with hatred. Even though Jiang Wang saw this gaze from someone else's point of view, he could still feel the bone-deep hatred. I haven't done any evil in my life. Why do I have to be tortured like this? Why? He was almost sobbing as he asked. The inner mansion realm cultivator from Sioux country was silent for a while. For the first time, he didn't mock him. Instead, he directly responded to him. There are also many people in our country who haven't done any evil in their lives, yet they have to die in the mouths of ferocious beasts. You ask why? How can there be so many whys in the world? Unfortunately, the old man with a single horn still couldn't understand. Just like that, he was taken away by the prisoner carriage with a heart full of hatred. Let's go. There's nothing to see. Ingguan directly flew out. Jiang Wang silently glanced at the inner mansion stage cultivator. In the end, he didn't do anything. He turned around and followed Ingguan. He seemed to have found the answer on this trip and solved the question that had been plaguing him for a long time. However, his heart did not relax. It was the same until they left the pine forest. After one question was answered, more questions arose. What was the relationship between the human race and the demon race? Where were the demons? How was his strength? Living in a modern world, he had always been accustomed to meridian unlocking pills. The production of meridian unlocking pills was indeed plentiful. As he cultivated for a long time, he gradually did not feel that it was precious, at least with his current strength. It was very easy for him to obtain a meridian unlocking pill. But now that he thought about it, the meridian unlocking pill could allow people without cultivation talent to start cultivating. What a great creation this was! Why was the name of the expert who created the meridian unlocking pill lost in the river of time? I'm leaving. After exiting the pine forest, Ingguan casually said something and flew away. He didn't care if Jiang Wang had anything else to say. Most of the time, he was indeed someone who only cared about his own goals. But Jiang Wang suddenly thought of something. With Ingguan's style of doing things, why would he specially come with him to the pine forest to explore the secret of the vicious beast's nest? Your country was also a small country and would also experience this. However, Jiang Wang thought that a person like Ingguan probably wouldn't care about the reason behind it. Could it be that a person with a heart as firm as iron like him also had moments of hesitation and indecisiveness like him? Not long after Ingguan and Jiang Wang left, in the underground cave, two guards looked at the catalyzed demonic beasts, and their hearts were filled with joy from the harvest. Catalyzing 1/3 of the demonic beasts in one go was already a pretty good success rate. I don't know why, but I just had a very uneasy feeling, said an inner mansion cultivator of Sioux country. With your strength, is there anything in this place that can threaten you? One of the guards flattered, but as soon as he finished speaking, he screamed in horror, Why can't I see anything? Why can't I see anything? Sir, sir? The other guard next to him also shouted, I think I'm blind. What do we do? Calm down. The inner mansion cultivator shouted at them to stop their panic. Let me take a look. He went closer to observe and saw that the eyes of the two guards were wide open, but they had already lost their vigor. They were indeed blind, but he had no clue as to how or why they were blind. He couldn't see anything at all. The inner mansion cultivator panicked all of a sudden, combined with the uneasy feeling he had just now. He felt as if something terrifying was spying on them in the dark. You guys stay here and don't move. I'll go get help. He turned around and flew toward the interior of the cave. There was a magic formation inside that could contact Su-Du and ask for help from powerful experts. The two guards who had lost their sight were both frightened and frightened. Sir, where are you going? Take me with you. Take me with you. Don't leave us behind, sir. They couldn't adapt to the sudden loss of light and ran around like headless flies. How could they possibly catch up with the inner mansion cultivator? What they didn't know was that someone had borrowed their vision just now. And this was the price of borrowing, and they had to pay it themselves. Ingguan's secret technique was so evil. It was already the morning of the next day when the powerful cultivator from Su-Du arrived. It wasn't that the journey would take a long time, but that the number of powerful cultivators in Su-Du was limited. Every powerful cultivator was in a very important position, and transferring powerful cultivators required a lot of coordination. On the other hand, only the two guards of the Pine Wave beast nest were suddenly blinded, and the nest itself wasn't damaged. Therefore, according to the judgment of Su-Du, the situation wasn't that urgent. Their vision was taken away. The person who performed the technique is very powerful. The powerful cultivator from Su-Du was a middle-aged woman with an ordinary face, but she had a very capable temperament. Looking at the inner mansion cultivator station here, she added, It's irreversible. The two guards who had been blinded for the whole night immediately despaired. The inner mansion cultivator also felt somewhat sad. After all, if the powerful cultivator from last night had made a mistake, the one who would have been blinded would have been him. Sir Song, who performed the technique. Why did they take away their vision? The middle-aged woman surnamed Song didn't expect that it was just a side effect of Ingguan borrowing their vision. If one thought about the problem from the perspective of taking away their vision, they would naturally deviate in the wrong direction. It's more like a warning, the middle-aged woman said. A warning. The inner mansion cultivator was shocked. You mean, he recalled the cursing from last night and couldn't help but feel uneasy. When I first came in, I noticed a group of ferocious beasts that showed signs of being suppressed by a powerful cultivator. Their instincts still left behind fear. The other party should also be a divine arrival realm cultivator, the woman said. From the word also, this woman was also a divine arrival realm cultivator. In the entire Sioux country, there was only one divine arrival realm cultivator surnamed Song, and that was Madame Shidu, Song Lian. After analyzing, she asked, We didn't skimp on the amount of meridian unlocking pills this time, right? The inner mansion cultivator had a bitter expression, but didn't say anything. How could I not skimp on the amount? Every time they catalyzed a monster beast, they would report a smaller amount within a reasonable range. This way, they would leave behind more meridian unlocking pills for their country. After all, every meridian unlocking pill was a transcendent cultivator. There's nothing we can do about it, Song Lian sighed. Let's just give all the harvest this time to Qi. They mistook Ingguan from last night as a powerful cultivator sent by Qi to inspect the harvest of meridian unlocking pills. Taking away the vision of the two normal cultivators was obviously a warning from Qi's powerful cultivator. Sioux country had to respond to this kind of warning. There was no other reason. It was just that the other party was strong and they were weak. Chapter 591. The Crescent Moon Island was the largest island in the offshore archipelago, and it was also the easternmost island in the offshore archipelago. It was in the shape of a crescent moon, with the protruding side facing the sea and the concave side facing the offshore archipelago. Looking down from above, it looked like it was hugging the archipelago with its arms. That was why the Crescent Moon Island had another name, which was Hawaii. Hawaii meant Hawaii and nostalgic Hawaii. Whether it was the Hawaii Island or the Crescent Moon Island, the famous fishing tower was located here. The bright moon rises above the sea, looking at the heavens end cliff from here. Those were the words carved on the cliff of the heavens end stage, which was how the heavens end stage got its name. Legend had it that the founder of the fishing tower had once fished a dragon on the highest heavens end stage on the island. That was how the name of the fishing tower came about. Of course, to many people, that was just a legend. It was very common to flatter one's ancestors. Even if it was exaggerated, it was still acceptable. However, the reason why the founder of the fishing tower was not recognized as history was that the dragon race had been extinct since the end of the Middle Ages. There were naturally forces that had been passed down from the Middle Ages, but that did not include the fishing tower. It wasn't unusual for an expert from the ocean fishing tower to force the experts from the state of Chi to retreat with a single word. The fishing tower's tough attitude in the offshore archipelago was also an important reason why Chi's progress here was slow. However, that was undeniably unsettling. Chi had been planning for the offshore archipelago for a long time. Even though all the sects and forces in the offshore archipelago had joined forces to resist, they had no choice but to withdraw. However, through the sea market trade, with the various aristocratic families as the vanguard, they used this gentler method to return to the offshore archipelago. After many years of operation, people had to admit that Chi's operation in the offshore archipelago could be ranked in the top 3 among all the forces. Some of Chi's top clans, such as the Tian clan of the Days, have been operating the offshore archipelago since a long time ago. The current head of the Junginjia clan, the 4th son of Chongqing clan, Mingyi, personally oversaw the offshore archipelago. Not long ago, the Tian clan and the Chongqing clan had made a deal to develop Chongqing Island for 10 years. In short, Chi's influence in the offshore archipelago could not be ignored. Of course, the leadership position of the ocean fishing tower was also deeply rooted. The rivalry between the state of Chi and the oceanic fishing tower was undeniably terrifying. As an elder of Fishing Sea Tower, Haizoming wasn't worried at all. Fishing Sea Tower and Chi had clashed countless times in the dark, but they rarely did it in the open. In a seemingly calm sea, the undercurrents at the bottom of the sea never stopped. Up until now, the ocean fishing tower was still firmly holding on to their position as the #1 power in the offshore islands. This was undoubtedly a result. It was true that Chi was extremely powerful, and there were very few forces in the world that could compare to him. However, the eastern region was its foundation, and Chi could never fully manage the offshore islands. Unless one day, it was overturned in the eastern region and had no choice but to turn to the nearby islands, or completely unify the eastern region. And at sea, who would the ocean fishing tower be afraid of? Fishing Sea Tower had the confidence to face everything on the sea. This was something that history had proven and would continue in the future. At the moment, he was troubled by something else. Recently, he had gone through a lot of trouble and found an ancient book. After studying it for a long time, he deciphered some hidden clues in the ancient book and verified it with his previous gains. Thus, he discovered a new piece of information. The core treasure in that abandoned oceanfront building is a mirror? The red makeup mirror? When I took the treasure, I didn't find the mirror. Did someone take it in advance? However, some of the restrictions were clearly untouched, which means that no one had broken it before. No, he came back to his senses and immediately thought of the answer. Damn it, I was tricked by that brat Hu Xiaoming. He stood up angrily. I'm going to grind his bones to dust. However, Hu Xiaoming was already dead, and his body wasn't even brought back. Even if he had to grind his bones to dust, he had to go to the Yang country. Now that he was in Chi's territory, it was even more inconvenient. Hai Zoming calmed himself down. First of all, he knew about Hu Xiaoming's death. This brat toyed with the feelings of his senior sister and even secretly harmed her, especially Zhu Suyao, who had a bright future in the sect. A good cultivation seed had been destroyed by him and was lost in the Heavenly Palace secret realm. Not only did he do it secretly, but he was also found out by his sister. This matter couldn't be tolerated by the sect rules. Even as an elder, Hai Zoming couldn't be biased. Moreover, when this matter was spread, Hu Xiaoming had already been killed, so there was no need to be biased. Zhu Suyao's master, that old woman, wasn't someone to be trifled with. Thus, he remained silent about Hu Xiaoming's death. However, now that he knew about the existence of the red makeup mirror, there were some things that needed to be considered again. The most important question was, who had the red makeup mirror? If Zhu Suyao was still alive, it might be possible. However, her sister, who had always been protected under his wings, was definitely not Hu Xiaoming's match. Hai Zoming was very clear about his disciple's strength. So it was that old hag who helped him? Had she secretly sent an expert over, or had she personally taken action? This matter needed to be considered at length. Hu Xiaoming had already been dead for a while, but he hadn't done anything before. In other words, the person who took the red makeup mirror didn't know that he knew about the existence of the mirror. Thus, he was currently in the dark, which was a huge advantage. A treasure like the red makeup mirror wasn't something that could be studied in 2 or 3 days. Thus, there was still time. Moreover, being anxious now was useless. After Zhu Biqiong returned, she only stated Hu Xiaoming's crimes, but didn't say how she killed him. Even if she wanted to talk about the details, she would only tell her master. Thus, the first thing that needed to be investigated was who left the coastal islands under that old woman when Hu Xiaoming died. That person should be the one who killed Hu Xiaoming. Whoever killed Hu Xiaoming should have the red makeup mirror. Of course, it was also possible that the mirror was handed over to that old woman. That would be the worst result. The old woman would definitely be able to estimate the value of that treasure. If he wanted to take it back, he needed to plan carefully. Thinking about this, Hai Zoming became angry and couldn't help but smash the table with his palm. Evil creature, dying like this is really too easy for you. At this time, Jiang Wang didn't know that his tracks in the pine forest beast lair had been discovered. Because of the misunderstanding, the risk was eliminated. He also didn't know that in the distant coastal islands, there were still consequences of Hu Xiaoming's death. He had already arrived outside Xian Kong Temple's Buddhist land. The reason why he hadn't stepped inside was because he still had some worries. He didn't need to worry about how to enter Xian Kong Temple. With his current status, the Grand Shi rank 4 blue medal holder, and the title of Lord, he probably didn't even have the qualifications to visit the temple. He mainly wanted to know whether that old monk Ku Ju was in Xian Kong Temple right now. Chapter 592. In the field, an old man was turning the soil. This work was not urgent. He just needed to turn a part of it every day. It would be more convenient to sow the seeds in spring. His body was rusty at home, so he might as well go out and exercise. A handsome young man walked over from the ridge in the field. This young man was born with clear eyes and a good temperament, but his expression was a little sneaky. Old man, I want to ask you something. However, it was a holy land of Buddhism, so the people there were simple and honest. The old man did not have any bad guesses. He just slowly broke the soil and smiled kindly. What is it? This young man was naturally Jiang Wang. When he mentioned Ku Ju's name, he looked left and right. It was obvious that the yellow-faced old monk had traumatized him. He asked carefully, has Master Ku Ju returned to Buddhism recently? Do you know? The old man shook his head. I haven't heard. Great. That old monk Ku Ju was powerful and respected, he called himself. If such an eminent monk was in the temple, the believers would know. After all, eminent monks of Buddhism often needed to do good deeds. Xiankong Temple was an ascetic temple. There were often eminent monks working in the fields, so there was not much difference between them and the believers. Jiang Wang was relieved. He straightened his back and looked calm. Thank you, old man. After saying goodbye politely, He went straight to the gate of Xiankong Temple. The old man continued to turn the soil, but he could not help but have some doubts. Was there a Master Kuju in the Holy Temple? He had not heard of him. It sounded like he was in the same generation as the abbot. The gate that appeared in the secular world was only a part of Xiankong Temple. It was usually called the Outer Mountain. A sect like Xiankong Temple had a reception monk who specialized in receiving cultivators. Those who came from aristocratic families had to have someone give them a name card in advance. They had to write their family name and title. Jiang Wang was not that particular, but he still followed the etiquette and showed his identity to the reception monk. After all, he was here to visit, not to challenge the temple. Jiang Wang, Qingyang, was asked by someone to pay a visit to the mountain. Please. Jiang Wang was facing the reception monk of Xiankong Temple. While he was going through the formalities, a monk slowly walked past him. Suddenly, he stopped and retreated. A surprised voice rang out, scaring Jiang Wang so much that he even forgot what he was going to say. Junior brother Jingshen. Jiang Wang felt his scalp go numb. He turned around and saw that the monk had delicate features. His robes were clean, and his scalp was shiny. It was the old acquaintance he had seen in Qingyang town. Even a wise man would make a mistake. Despite all his calculations, he had left out monk Jingli. However, Jiang Wang soon discovered that he had made more than one mistake. This was because Jingli had already turned his head and shouted happily, "Master, junior brother Jingshen is back." His voice was infused with Tao essence and spread far and wide in the mountain gate. Whoosh! The wind blew past. Where? The yellow-faced old monk's voice arrived first. As soon as he landed, he saw Jiang Wang with a stiff expression. "Good disciple," he praised. "Aren't you throwing yourself into a trap? Think carefully. Have you had an epiphany?" Kuju grinned, revealing a mouthful of not-so-white teeth. He nodded in affirmation. "I told you you have the root of wisdom." Monk Jingli looked at him emotionally. Little junior brother must have suffered a lot in a turbid place like Lindsay, right? You look a little haggard. The reception monk looked at Jiang Wang in a daze, thinking, is this the legendary junior brother of Master Jingli? Why hasn't he had his head shaved? Jiang Wang was speechless. How can I not be haggard after meeting you? Masters. Jiang Wang took a deep breath. I think you've misunderstood. No, we're family. Master understands you. Kuju smiled from ear to ear and reached out to hold his hand. Jiang Wang hurriedly dodged, but he failed completely. Just as his Tao essence began to surge, his hand was grabbed. His Tao essence rushed forward, but it was as if it had hit an iron wall. It couldn't move at all. It looked like he was letting his master hold him. The scene was quite harmonious. Jingli chuckled. Junior brother, you've realized your mistake and returned to the sect to enjoy life. Kuju was already leading him inside. Let's go. Master will take you to see the sect. Jiang Wang was secretly shocked. The stronger he was, the more he recognized Kuju's strength. The current Jiang Wang was much stronger than the Jiang Wang in Qingyang town. But in front of Kuju, he still couldn't resist. Wait, what sect? He came back to his senses and said, Master, please listen to me. Hey, you're quite shy with strangers. In order to show his friendliness, Kuju deliberately squeezed his eyebrows and pretended to be angry. You're still calling me master? Jingli also said, it's time to call him master. After saying that, he smiled happily. And then call him senior brother. It was impossible to get along with these two monks, one old and one young. Jiang Wang had no choice but to circulate his Tao essence and shout loudly. Under Master Guan Yan's request, to cheese Qingyang town's rank, for Blue Medal Constable Jiang Wang is here to pay a visit. He said the purpose of his visit. He wanted to draw out the person who could suppress Kuju. At the same time, he pointed out his official title in Qi to show that he had a backer and was doing well in Qi. He wanted to make the old monk and the young monk give up. His voice shook the sect. Jingli was one of them, so it was fine to shout. Jiang Wang's shout was somewhat provocative, but no one cared about this. What's yin? Kuju turned his head and asked his obedient eldest disciple. Jingli said honestly, I think it's yin. What yin? Kuju asked Jiang Wang again. Good disciple, you're very happy to see Master, but don't speak without thinking. The two of them didn't care about Jiang Wang's title, but they were very sensitive to the Master he mentioned. There was no other reason. Guanyan's seniority was too high. The current generation of Xiankong Temple was past Xing, Zhiguan, Exin, sorrow, and suffering emptiness are all Dharma. The Guan generation was 4 generations older than the Ku generation. At this moment, a worrisome voice sounded in everyone's ears. Invite Benefactor Jiang into the sect. The owner of the voice ordered. First of all, the name Benefactor Jiang meant that he didn't approve of Ku Ju's one-sided decision to take him in as a disciple. Then, the word please indicated that his attitude couldn't be forced. Other than Abbot Ku Ming, no one could persuade Ku Ju, who was eager to take in a disciple. And the sect he mentioned was, of course, the true location of Xiankong Temple. Since Senior Brother Abbot had spoken, Ku Ju could only let go of Jiang Wang's hand, but his expression was still unhappy. Oh, my good disciple, did you really come for something? You didn't come just to see Master? I was asked by someone, Jiang Wang said helplessly. Also, Master Ku Ju, please don't call me disciple anymore. Disciple, you should think carefully before you speak. The yellow-faced old monk automatically ignored the second half of his sentence. He curled his lips and said, those bald donkeys are quite troublesome, especially the one called Ku Bing. He's been annoying since he was young. But don't be afraid. He patted his chest. Master will protect you. Chapter 593. The pagodas were like a forest, all of them suspended in the air. This scene was so shocking that one couldn't understand it unless they saw it with their own eyes. The majestic main temple, which was suspended in the air purely by its own material, overturned Jiang Wang's understanding of temples. There was such a building in the world. As expected of the eastern sacred land of Buddhism, the place where countless Buddhas chanted day and night. Jiang Wang flew through the pagoda forest, heading straight for the main temple. On his left was Ku Ju, and on his right was Jingli. They looked like 2 guardian vajras. One on the left and one on the right. They were very protected. Masters, Jiang Wang thought for a moment, then said, your temple is very spacious. You don't have to be so close. Nonsense. Ku Ju reprimanded. You're still young. You don't know how sinister people are. This temple is big, and the demonic winds are strong. The pond is deep, and there are even more bastards. Those bald donkeys are all bad. We, master and disciple, need to be united, hand in hand, and work together to clean up the mess. We need to sweep away the evil and bring glory to Xiankong Temple. When I become the abbot in the future, you'll be the next abbot. Master, Jingli felt that something was amiss. What about me? Ku Ju just remembered that he had already promised the position of the next abbot to Jingli. Thus, he changed his words. You're older and more sensible. As the senior brother, you need to yield to your junior brother. Jing Shun will be the next abbot, and you'll be the next vice abbot. Jingli didn't really care that the position of the first abbot was taken by his junior brother. He was willing to yield to his junior brother. He just scratched his bald head. But our Xiankong Temple doesn't have a vice abbot. Jingli, why did you become so stiff? Kuju criticized. As monks, we must know how to be flexible. You've already left your home, yet you still abide by those rules. Why did you become a monk in the first place? The position of vice abbot didn't exist in the past, but it doesn't mean it won't exist in the future. Master is right. Jingli put his palms together, deeply inspired. I've been thinking too much. The two of them chatted back and forth. Jiang Wang was in the middle, completely at a loss for words. This was not a conversation that anyone in their right mind could have. Disregarding everything else, the matter of coveting the abbot's position, cleaning up the roots, and reforming the system of the temple. Shouldn't such an important matter be discussed in a secluded place? Jiang Wang had a headache. This old monk Ku Ju was abnormally stubborn and full of nonsense. But no matter what he said, Jingli believed him without a doubt. They were truly a pair of master and disciple made for each other. Jiang Wang was even more determined to stay away from this pair of master and disciple who were so compatible. How could he be worthy of joining them? Fortunately, his flying speed was not slow. He finally landed in front of the main temple of Xiankong Temple before Ku Ju and Jingli started the next topic. What surprised him was that the abbot of Xiankong Temple, Master Ku Ming, was waiting in front of the temple. It was a fat monk with drooping white eyebrows and a distressed face. As soon as she saw him, she felt a sense of impermanence and worry. She had never seen him before, but as soon as she saw him, she knew that this person was undoubtedly the abbot of Xiankong Temple, Master Ku Ming. Jiang Wang's Taoist heart was extremely firm. Of course, he would not be moved by this little worry. He took the initiative to say, "Abbot, I'm really sorry to trouble you to welcome me." The fat monk smiled, but his smile was even more distressed and miserable than when he did not smile. "It's fine. Just now, Benefactor Jiang said outside the mountain gate that you were asked to come by Master Guanyin?" "That's right." Master Ku Ming nodded. "Guanyan's name is indeed in the jade archive of my temple. He was lost in the secret realm 500 years ago, and there was no news of him. Presumably, Benefactor Jiang saw him in the secret realm?" "Yes," Jiang Wang said. "I was lucky enough to meet Master Guanyin in the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower of the Tian family of days." Wait. Ku Ju pulled him aside. "We haven't even talked about the benefits. What are you in a hurry to say?" Master Ku Ming looked at this yellow-faced old monk and did not know whether to laugh or cry. At this moment, a black-clothed monk with a serious face behind Ku Ming said, "Ku Ju, you can't just do whatever you want." "Huh?" Ku Ju sneered without any trace of politeness. "Ku Di, you're just the head of the Guanshi Hall. How dare you lecture me?" The three halls of Xiankong Temple were the Dragon-Subduing Hall, the Flower-Picking Hall, and the Guanshi Hall. The positions of the heads of the three halls in the temple were only below that of the abbot. But in Ku Ju's mouth, they became only. It was as if he had already become the abbot. Ordinary people would not be able to tell that Master Ku Ju did not even have a position in Xiankong Temple. "I'm telling you to stop talking nonsense." Ku Di was obviously a serious person. He could not bear to see him not following the rules. He said with a cold face, "What nonsense were you talking about on the road just now?" Ku Ju and Jing Li had spoken nonsense about the position of the abbot. If they really wanted to investigate, they could still investigate. But Ku Ju did not look guilty at all. Instead, he flew into a rage. "You long-eared and hairless black rabbit. You're eavesdropping on me again." Among all the monks present, only the black-clothed Ku Di was so angry that his voice was shaking. "You dare to talk nonsense, but you don't dare to let others hear you?" "Humph," Ku Ju said with a strong sense of righteousness. "The supreme divine ability of the Buddhist League is not for you to use for sneaky purposes." Ku Di was so angry that his voice became sharp. "Who's stealing?" "Huh," Ku Ju sneered. On the evening of the 9th day of the 7th month of the year 3814 in the Taoist calendar, you didn't do your evening classes. Where are you? You stole someone's luhua chicken and ate it. Now you want to deny it? No way. You. Ku Di's chest bulged as if it was about to explode. Jiang Wang was stunned as he listened on the side. On the 7th day of the 7th month of the year 3814 in the Taoist calendar. What a guy. He was talking about something that happened more than 100 years ago. Master Ku Ming's face was so bitter that it seemed like water was about to drip out. That year, that chicken was indeed stolen by Ku Di. However, all of them had secretly eaten it, and Ku Ju had eaten the most. But now, Ku Ju was the only one speaking righteously, as if it had nothing to do with him. None of the abbots or heads present could stand out and say that it was eaten together in the past. After all, it was a violation of the precepts, and so many disciples were watching. Amidst the silence, Ku Ju continued to attack. "You little thief who stole the chicken, bald donkey in the corner, you've really damaged the illustrious reputation of our Xiankong Temple. I think you're no longer suitable for the position of head of the Guanshi Hall." Head senior brother. He turned to look at Master Ku Ming with a sincere expression. I'll take on this responsibility for the time being. Senior brother, don't worry. I, Kuju, am not a person who is obsessed with power and position. I'm not like Ku Bing and the others, who are unwilling to move there but from the seat of head. When I find a virtuous person, I'll immediately step down from my position. Everyone knew that once he really became the head of the Guanshi Hall, that virtuous person would probably never be found in his lifetime. Ku Bing flew into a rage at the side. Ku Ming had specifically advised him. So this time he didn't say anything and didn't express his opinion at all. He didn't expect that this would also affect him. He immediately roared, "Why am I unwilling to move my butts?" The head of the Dragon's Subduing Hall has always been a Dao protector who can fight. If you can beat me, then come at me. His figure was thin, but the volume of his voice was strangely loud, like a large bell. It shocked the listeners to the point that they were secretly shocked. However, Kuju acted as if nothing had happened. He even picked his ears and faced Master Kuming. "Senior brother, look. You want to fight with me at the slightest provocation. Our Xiankong Temple, the holy land of Buddhism, has actually been reduced to a place where people fight fiercely. What is this?" He shook his head and wrung his hands. He was filled with grief and indignation. The ancestors worked hard to build this foundation. They definitely didn't expect that the younger generation of monks would be so disappointing, right? My heart hurts. Chapter 594. Jiang Wang blinked. The yellow-faced old monk was indeed very strong. He fought against 2 first seats alone and even had the upper hand. He was truly terrifying. Master Kuming could no longer remain silent. Seeing Ku Di and Ku Bing defeated one after another, he hurriedly said, "Benefactor Jiang was brave enough to help our Xiankong Temple disciples pass on a message. Naturally, Xiankong Temple has to express our gratitude." Sigh. Ku Ju rushed to say, "Senior apprentice brother, why don't you tell us what you want to express? When the time comes, do you want to express your gratitude?" The first seat of Observation Hall, Ku Di frowned. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he probably thought of the crushing defeat just now and closed his mouth resentfully. Ku Ming said helplessly, "Then junior apprentice brother Ku Ju, what do you think we should use as a reward?" "Well," Ku Ju pondered sincerely, "we can't not have a magic tool to subdue demons. We should pass on a set of Buddhist palm prints, right? We should at least give a few sariras. Given our Xiankong Temple's status, if we want to give something, we should give something of high quality." Ku Ming frowned. The magic tool to subdue demons is fine, but the Buddhist secret arts cannot be passed on easily. Benefactor Jiang might not be able to use the sariras, right? What do you mean by cannot be passed on easily? Ku Ju stomped his feet. "Jingli is my disciple. Even if you don't pass it on, I will." As for the sariras, they began to haggle over the price. Although Ku Ju was indeed doing it for his own good, Jiang Wang really couldn't stand this kind of solicitude. He said helplessly, "Masters, I'm just helping Master Guanyin deliver something. I don't need any reward." Why is this child's brain so slow? Ku Ju tugged at Jiang Wang and criticized, "Even if you don't need it, doesn't your senior apprentice brother need it?" Monk Jingli said heartlessly, "I don't need anything. I'm very happy in the temple." Ku Ju glared at him and said to Jiang Wang, "Even if your senior apprentice brother doesn't need it, doesn't your master need it?" He said earnestly, "Your master is already so old, but he still has to run around and work hard for 2 immature disciples. Do you think it's easy? Shouldn't he get a few sariras to nourish himself? I really don't need any reward. Even if you really need any response, Master Guanyin has already thanked me." Jiang Wang looked at Master Kuming and said firmly, "This is the agreement between me and Master Guanyin. I came to Xiankong Temple to fulfill the agreement." As he spoke, he took out Guanyin's white monk robe from the storage box and handed it to Master Kuming. "I promised Master Guanyin that I would send his robe back to Xiankong Temple. That's all." Kuming looked at the snow-white monk robe in his hand and couldn't help but ask, "He just wants to send this robe back to the temple." He had thought that it was a senior monk who had been lost in the secret realm and had asked the Xiankong Temple for help through Jiang Wang. He was just about to ask about the specific location of the secret realm so that he could arrange for rescue. A monk who could go through 500 years of history would at least be in the immortal ascension realm. No matter how one looked at it, Xiankong Temple had to rescue them. He didn't expect that the monk named Guan Yin had no intention of asking for help. He just wanted to bring the monk robe back. Jiang Wang understood what he meant. He shook his head and sighed. When I met Master Guan Yin, he only had a little bit of his true spirit left. It was with the help of a treasure of my companion that he was able to manifest his true form. Before we parted, he just asked me to send his robe back to Xiankong Temple and burn it in front of his master's grave. He didn't say anything else. Jiang Wang deliberately concealed Su Qiyun's spirit jade. Other than that, he didn't hide anything else. The monks of Xiankong Temple all looked solemn. Even the old monk Ku Ju, who had always been frivolous, subconsciously restrained himself. Only a little bit of his true spirit was left. It was indeed impossible to save him. What kind of disaster did the senior monk, whose Buddhist name was Guan Yin, encounter in the secret realm to be so miserable that he only had a little bit of his true spirit left? After being lost for 500 years, only the monk robe had returned. Ku Ming held the snow-white monk robe and looked at the head of Guanshi Hall, Ku Di. Ku Di concentrated for a while and said, Guan Yin's master was Master Zhixiang. Master Zhixiang died in the hands of the heretics 500 years ago. There was no corpse left. He had to bury his robe in the Lingyu Pagoda. Master Zhixiang died in the hands of the heretics 500 years ago. That was to say, before Guan Yin entered the secret realm of the Seven Stars Tower, his master had already died. No wonder Guan Yin directly said that he wanted to burn the monk robe in front of his master's grave and didn't ask about the situation of Xiankong Temple. According to the Jade Archive of Xiankong Temple, Guan Yin's master was Master Zhixiang, and Master Zhixiang's master was Master Dingyu. Master Dingyu left behind a golden body and became one of the forest of pagodas. After his death, the stone pagoda enshrined his golden body was the Lingyu Pagoda. As Dingyu's disciple, Zhixiang's robe was also buried in the Lingyu Pagoda. Ku Ming was silent for a while and said, Donor Jiang, please follow me to the Lingyu Pagoda. Of course. Jiang Wang answered and followed. Abbot Ku Ming's fat body flew away from Xiankong Temple and entered the forest of pagodas. Only then did Jiang Wang realize that the forest of pagodas that he had passed by on his way here were all stone pagodas enshrined for deceased monks. The Lingyu Pagoda was only one of them. This was a simple-looking stone pagoda that was suspended in the air under the effect of the engraved magic formation. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary pagoda temple in Xiankong Temple's mountain gate. Jiang Wang already knew that the stone pagoda enshrined Master Dingyu's golden body and several of his buried disciples. The group flew to the front of the Lingyu Pagoda. Ku Ming let go of his hand, and Ren Guanyin's robe floated in the air. Almsgiver Jiang, please fulfill his wish. Jiang Wang nodded and flicked a flame flower with his finger. The flame flower floated towards the monk robe and ignited it. Everyone was immersed in a solemn atmosphere. No one noticed that after Jiang Wang flicked the flame flower, the old monk Ku Ju's expression suddenly became complicated. Only the pure-hearted monk Jing Li suddenly felt a sense of grief and could not help but tug at the yellow-faced old monk's tattered sleeve. In front of the Lingyu Pagoda, the snow-white monk robe floated in the air and burned in the flames. This scene was a memorial, but it also seemed like a new life. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Jiang Wang could not find the source of the voice at all. He only felt that it seemed to come from the monk robe. Ku Ming, Ku Bing, Ku Di, and Ku Ju. These four monks looked up at the sky at almost the same time. It was the direction of the Big Dipper, the Aliyah star. The power came from the Aliyah star field and used the monk robe as a beacon to let the voice land there. It was a very gentle voice. Jiang Wang could tell that it was Guanyin's voice. My Buddha, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. In the land of extreme evil, I saw the flower of bliss. In this life, I will not become a Buddha. Jiang Wang's mind trembled. Others did not know the cause and effect, but he knew the story of Guanyin and Xiao Fan clearly. In this paragraph, Guanyin asked the Buddha for forgiveness. In fact, he was also asking his teacher for forgiveness. He said, "Please forgive my sins, forgive my delusions, forgive my depravity, forgive my gladness, forgive my infatuation, forgive my stubbornness. Because in the land of extreme evil, I saw the flower of bliss. I gave up the Tao that I have always adhered to. In this life, I no longer seek to become a Buddha." Chapter 595. Guanyin was referring to the forest ocean origin world during the Age of Darkness. And the flower of bliss he was referring to was obviously little trouble. All living beings are free from suffering, but they enjoy all kinds of bliss. Hence the name bliss. Bliss was the goal of many Buddhas. But for Guanyin, he had already found his bliss in the forest ocean origin world. It was at this moment that Jiang Wang realized that Guanyin had the opportunity to leave the forest ocean origin world, but he was unwilling to do so. He had asked Jiang Wang to return his monk robes to Xiankong Temple so that he could bid farewell to his faith and his deceased master. Only then would he be able to abandon Buddhism and leave. He would no longer need to follow the precepts, and he would be able to love what he loved. The last wisp of his snow-white monk robes burned away in the air, and Guanyin's voice faded away. Jiang Wang bowed, then straightened up and bid farewell to the monks of Xiankong Temple. Mortals don't dare to stay in a Buddhist land of tranquility for too long. Now that this matter is settled, Jiang Wang will take his leave first. "I'll have to trouble you with Master Guanyin," Abbot Kuming said. "Please wait for a moment. I'll send someone to fetch some Buddhist karmic ties." The so-called Buddhist karmic ties were just a polite way of saying thanks. Actually, even if Ku Ju hadn't fought for them, a sect like Xiankong Temple wouldn't have let Jiang Wang leave empty-handed. Of course, the level of Buddhist karmic ties would still be adjusted. Xiankong Temple was a large sect, and Ku Ju had fought for them. The Buddhist karmic ties that Abbot Kuming had sent someone to fetch were definitely worth a lot. However, Jiang Wang still refused. "Senior Guan Yin is someone I respect greatly. He's willing to trust me, and I'm willing to do what I can for him. There's no need for any reward. Moreover, the monk robes have already burned away, so this matter has nothing to do with your esteemed temple. I wouldn't have taken them before, and I definitely won't take them now." Guanyin's robes had burned away, indicating that his karmic ties with Xiankong Temple had come to an end. Since Jiang Wang had pointed this out, Kuming naturally had no reason to force him to give a gift. However, he couldn't help but raise his evaluation of this youth a bit. "Xiankong Temple will remember your kindness." Kuming raised his palm and chanted, "Namo, Shakyamuni Buddha." Jiang Wang bowed again and then turned to leave. As soon as his feet moved, Ku Ju immediately squeezed in front of him, his face full of smiles. "Master will send you off." Jiang Wang couldn't refuse. Even if he refused, it would be useless. He could only say politely, "Then I'll have to trouble you, master." Ku Ju stubbornly claimed to be his master. Jiang Wang tirelessly distanced himself from Ku Ju and repeatedly called him great master to clarify their relationship. He refused to let Ku Ju do as he pleased. In terms of persistence, it was hard to tell who was better. After Ku Ju and Jiang Wang left, Monk Jingli naturally followed after them. An abbot and 2 first seats of the Xiankong Temple were still in front of the Tower of Dingyu. After a moment of silence, the head of the Guanshi Hall, Ku Di, spoke first. "Guanyin has betrayed the sect. How to deal with this matter? There needs to be a set of rules. There's only a bit of true spirit left. What else can we do?" The head of the Dragon Subduing Institute, Kubing, shouted. It was obvious that he was trying his best to keep his voice down, but it was still deafening. Fortunately, everyone was already used to it. "I don't think so." Ku Di shook his head. "How can a bit of true spirit communicate with others? How can he ask others to do things? Moreover, he could project power from the Aliyah starfield. Kuming spoke at this time. I see that benefactor Jiang is sincere. He's not lying. Perhaps he's not lying. But with his cultivation, can he see the truth? Ku Di asked in return. Ku Bing said loudly. He's been lost in the secret realm for 500 years. He can completely not let us know that he's still alive. He even asked someone to return his monk robes and bid farewell to the sect. It's enough to see his feelings for the sect. That's his matter. It's also his choice. Ku Di was unmoved. I only know that this is the sect's rule. No one can overstep it. His path of cultivation has been a resource of the Xiankong Temple. All of his extraordinary fortunes have been given to him by the Xiankong Temple. How can he easily leave the sect just because he says, I will never become a Buddha in this life? Ku Bing did not have any discontent. He knew that Ku Di was such an old-fashioned person. Also, he had nothing to say when the sect's rules were brought up. Therefore, he only asked, then what do you think we should do? Find him first. If he really only has a bit of true spirit left, then the pain he suffered will be enough. The Xiankong Temple will not pursue the matter. If not, then we have to at least destroy everything he has learned and force him back from the transcendent realm so that the secret techniques of the Xiankong Temple will not be spread. Ku Di's expression was serious. There was no room for negotiation. Ku Bing had to admit that while he might have been strict, he was upholding the sect's rules. At this time, an eyebrowless monk seemed to appear out of thin air and landed behind them. 500 years of teaching. Is it not enough to repay this master's kindness? Ku Bing hurriedly turned around. With the dignity of the abbot, he still bowed first. Why have you come? The presence of an old friend has activated the Zen Ji. The eyebrowless monk had a ferocious face, but his voice was very gentle. The matter of Guan Yin will end here. Zen Master Ji Xie. Ku Di still did not change his tone. I'm only following the sect's rules. This eyebrowless monk was a senior monk of the Ji generation. He was 1 generation older than Guan Yin and 5 generations older than Ku Di and the others. No wonder even Ku Ming had a bow first. But seniority was seniority. As the current head of the Guanshi Hall of the Xiankong Temple, Ku Di did not have to go against his wishes. The eyebrowless Zen master Ji Xie sighed. Guan Yin was the disciple of Ji Xiang. Among all the disciples of the Guanshi generation, he was the youngest and the youngest. He was the youngest apprentice brother of all the Guanshi generation disciples. When Ji Xiang died, he asked Ji Xiu to take care of him. Then Ji Xiu died. It was the abbot. As the eyebrowless monk said this, he looked apologetically at Ku Ming and changed his tone. It was senior apprentice brother Jin Yin who took care of him personally. The senior apprentice brother Ji Xie mentioned was naturally the abbot of the Xiankong Temple at that time. He had passed away long ago. His golden body was in the pagoda forest. Ku Di frowned and said, the sect loves him so much. He should be even more loyal. Senior apprentice brother Jin Yin wanted him to be the next abbot. Unfortunately, he was lost in the secret realm and was never heard from again. I didn't expect to hear from him after so long. Zen Master Ji Xie shook his head. Among all the bodhisattvas I have seen, his comprehension is the best. Unfortunately, since he is so good, we can't just let him go like this. Ku Di was really dissatisfied. Rules were rules. Zen Master Ji Xie was of high seniority and was worthy of respect. However, as the head of the Guanshi Hall, he was talking about rules here. He kept reminiscing about the past, which was really unpleasant. To put it nicely, he was just a chatterbox. To put it bluntly, he was taking advantage of his seniority. Zen Master Ji Xie looked at him and smiled bitterly. There have been so many heads of the Guanshi Hall, but they all seem to be carved from the same mold. They're all old-fashioned. When I look at you, I feel like I'm still in the past. Chapter 596. It is not that the Guanshi Hall is strict, but the previous Guanshi Hall heads have always been strict. The Guanshi Hall is in charge of supervision and discipline. If we do not uphold the rules, who will? Ku Di did not hide his emotions and said directly, "It is our duty. Please do not interfere." Zen Master Evil Ji looked much younger than Ku Ming and the others. He was only in his 40s. This meant that he should have reached God's descent at this age and did not age anymore. It was just that his face was somewhat ferocious, and he did not look like a Buddhist. Facing Ku Di's dissatisfaction, he raised his eyebrows and looked fierce. However, there was no anger in his voice. According to the mountain sect's rules, you should not look for Guanyin. He no longer owes Xiankong Temple. It was right to respect one's teachers and elders. However, it was also right to fulfill one's duty and uphold the rules. Ku Di had a clear choice between the two. He did not back down and said, "You have been in seclusion for so many years. You probably do not remember the mountain sect's rules." In the entire Xiankong Temple, the Guanshi Hall head was known for his stubbornness. He only followed the rules. Other than the annoying Ku Ju, no one could make it back down. Zen Master Evil Ji was a senior monk, and Ku Di was the Guanshi Hall head. If there was a big conflict, it would not be good for Xiankong Temple. However, Ku Ming suddenly felt something and asked, "You mentioned 500 years of teaching. Do you mean, haven't you noticed?" Zen Master Evil Ji sighed. "Look at the Dingyu Tower." Only then did Ku Di turn his gaze to the Tower of Finality. What he saw shocked him. Out of respect for the senior monks who had passed away, they did not look inside the tower. At this moment, under Zen Master Evil Ji's reminder, he looked inside and immediately realized that in the Dingyu Tower, besides the original golden body of Wizard Dingyu, there was now a smaller golden body. Its voice and appearance were vivid and lifelike. Golden light flowed, and it was solemn. This stone tower had become a double golden body tower. "It is Ji Xiang." Zen Master Evil Ji's voice sounded faintly. "This golden body is the result of teaching. It is the virtue of virtue. It was erected today. Who else could it be other than Guanyin? What he had done in the past 500 years could be seen from this golden body. What other questions do you have?" He used his merit to build a golden body for his master. He left behind a golden body for our Xiankong Temple. How can he still owe us anything? In this lifetime, he would never become a Buddha. In this lifetime, he would never become a Buddha. Ku Ming repeated this sentence twice in his heart. Many people say that I don't want to become a Buddha, that I don't want to do this anymore. Actually, I can't do it. But judging from this merit, Guanyin really had a chance to become a Buddha, so he really gave up. It was only this kind of parting that truly made people feel the weight of it. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Ku Di put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. It was Ku Di's carelessness that almost caused me to be wronged. I'm willing to face the wall for a month to repay you. He had no personal likes or dislikes towards Guanyin and was very firm in upholding the rules. However, when he knew that he was wrong, he did not pretend and immediately admitted it. "Excellent." His voice was faint, but evil-stopping Zen Master's figure had already disappeared. I didn't expect him to still be alive. As soon as evil-stopping Zen Master left, Ku Bing couldn't wait to whisper. Of course, the volume of his voice was still as loud as a bell. Evil-stopping Zen Master was a senior monk that he revered very much. The name Stopping Evil wasn't given by words, but by fighting. For a monk like him who believed that where the fist goes is where the Buddhist principle goes, evil-stopping Zen Master was simply a golden radiance. Therefore, even though he was already quite old, he still couldn't help but feel very excited. Ku Ming glanced at him with a frown. His meaning was very obvious. Maybe he hasn't gone far yet. Can you keep your voice down? After so many years of tacit understanding between fellow disciples, Ku Bing felt wronged. I've already kept my voice down. Outside the mountain gate of Xiankong Temple, the old monk Ku Ju followed Jiang Wang step by step and asked casually, "The way you burned the monk robe just now was quite beautiful." Jiang Wang's reaction was very calm. "You flatter me." This answer obviously couldn't scratch Ku Ju's itch. He blinked and changed his angle. "I'm actually quite familiar with the flame flower Taoist technique, right? Maybe I can give you some pointers. By the way, who did you learn it from?" Jiang Wang didn't bat an eyelid. Such a wonderful low-level fire Taoist technique. You must have deciphered many parts of it, right? TSK, TSK, TSK. I thought you were an honest child. Kuju walked in front of him and said with a smile, "You're hiding something from me." "Master," Jiang Wang sighed, "a highly respected senior monk like you should be busy every day. Why do you still have time to follow me? Aren't you busy at all?" "I'm not busy, cough." Kuju's tone changed very quickly. "I am quite busy, but we haven't seen each other for so long. We have to catch up. Look, you're already distant from me." Jiang Wang rolled his eyes. "Master, have I ever been close to you?" "Hey, it's fine if you don't want to talk about it. We master and disciple can talk about other things." Kuju changed the topic with a mischievous smile. "I told you before that Kuju is the most annoying person. In fact, other than being a little stupid, noisy, fierce, and ugly, how is Kuju annoying?" "It's just that if I scold Kuju, he'll hear me. He's also narrow-minded. I'm not worried about anything else. He can't do anything to me, but I'm worried that he'll target my precious disciple." As he spoke, he glanced at Jiang Wang and tried to curry favor. "Only you." Jiang Wang was unmoved. Kuju wasn't discouraged and continued to ramble. "Who knows that even if I don't scold him, he'll still treat me like dirt." "Hey, I should have scolded him." Jiang Wang silently observed the route, thinking about how to quickly get rid of this old monk. "What do you think?" Kuju mischievously bumped Jiang Wang with his shoulder, catching Jiang Wang off guard and causing him to stagger. Just now in the temple, wasn't Master awe-inspiring? He had a smug look on his face. "You're my precious disciple. How can I let him bully you?" "Master, master, what about me?" Jingli followed behind and shouted. Kuju frowned, feeling that the atmosphere he had worked so hard to create was gone. Thus, he turned around and asked, "Have you copied the sutras?" Jing Li's smiling face instantly collapsed. "You didn't say that you were going to copy the sutras today. You still need me to say this?" Kuju was furious. "You still need me to say this? Are you cultivating for me to cultivate? When I was cultivating, why didn't I ask your grandmaster to tell me? I'm diligent, conscientious, and self-disciplined. That's why I have today's status and am respected by others. But you're so lazy. Tell me, if you don't even have this bit of self-awareness, how are you going to inherit my mantle in the future?" "Master," Jingli opened his mouth. "Master, what father? Do you listen to your master? If you don't call me master." "No, master." "Still not? You're still talking back to your master? Your wings have hardened." Jingli. "No, master." Jingli was about to cry. Little junior brother seems to have run away. Only then did Kuju suddenly turn around. However, he saw faint clouds on the horizon. Jiang Wang's figure was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 597. To the current Jiang Wang, the yellow-faced old monk was an unfathomable existence. He didn't know why Kuju was so obsessed with him, and he couldn't understand why Kuju was so passionate about taking him in as a disciple. However, whether he understood or not couldn't change the situation between them. He couldn't afford to offend Kuju, he couldn't win in a fight, and he couldn't win in an argument. Jiang Wang didn't stop. He flew out of Xiankong Temple's territory and headed northwest in the direction of Zheng. Qian Xiang should be waiting for him in Zheng. They traveled from the Su Empire to the Xiankong Temple, and then returned from the Xiankong Temple. Because of the matter in Songtao City, they deliberately avoided the Su Empire and went through the Star Moon Plain. Star Moon Plain was a long and narrow plain sandwiched between Su State and Xiang State to the west. It was long and narrow, but that was only for the overall terrain. Star Moon Plain was quite vast. It was almost as large as either Su State or Xiang State. Its terrain was flat and fertile. It was an excellent plain. However, it didn't belong to either of the neighboring Su State and Xiang State. Instead, it was located in the middle and had no owner. It naturally formed the boundary between the two states. The reason why the Star Moon Plain was ownerless was hard to say at this point. However, there was a widely spread saying that it was because Star Moon Plain was too superior that both Qi State and Jing state wanted to take it for themselves. In the end, neither side could obtain it. They could only put it aside. If Qi state and Jing state couldn't obtain it, then Su state and Xiang state had no right to do so. That was why Star Moon Plain was ownerless to this day. There were a few small forces stationed there, but none of them were able to make a name for themselves. Speaking of which, even if they were successful, Qi state and Jing state wouldn't let them take over Star Moon Plain. At night, Jiang Wang stopped. He didn't need a rest. His worldly isolated island was extremely vast and rare. After his trip to the Forest Ocean Origin Realm, he had consolidated his worldly isolated island and released a huge amount of Tao energy. The amount of Tao energy he could use was extremely vast. Of course, the so-called worldly isolated island was only rare for ordinary cultivators. Jiang Wang knew several people who were comparable, such as Wang Yiwu, because the heavenly isolated island was the result of opening the gate of heaven and earth. Wang Yiwu, who had gone further in the reaching heaven state, would only have a wider heavenly isolated island. Jiang Wang stopped at this time, of course, because of the routine evening class. If the inner mansion stage was the process of a child searching for treasures in his own home, and the hidden treasures of the human body were the treasures that cultivators searched for, then the daily exploration process was the prerequisite for obtaining the hidden treasures of the human body. The children who went treasure hunting had to be very familiar with the house first. Only then could they find the treasures in the corners that were easily overlooked. There were many uninhabited places on the Star Moon Plain. Jiang Wang randomly found a patch of grass and sat down. There was no need for extra vigilance. With his current strength, even if he was cultivating, he would not miss the slightest sign of trouble. Between heaven and earth, one person sat alone. The vast and boundless plains allowed one's mind to spread freely. Only at night did he find out how the moon and stars got their name. This plain was not high, but the clouds in the sky seemed to be very thin, and the stars seemed to be very close. Looking up at the sky, the stars and the moon seemed to be right in front of his eyes. They were very clear and within reach. It seemed that the stars were resting here. The beauty of nature was stunning. The so-called moon and stars plain was the plain covered by the stars and the moon. Of course, nothing in the outside world would affect Jiang Wang's cultivation. No matter if the environment was beautiful or ugly, bad or good. He completed every step according to the prescribed order. After carefully cleaning the inner mansion and completing the necessary exploration, he left the inner mansion and started to cultivate the fire source atlas again, accumulating the power of the fire totem. His cultivation speed was not fast. If the fire totem was compared to a water bowl, the totem power could only cover the bottom of the bowl. But he was not in a hurry. This was a painstaking effort. After a long time, the totem power would be full. When the totem power was full, it would be a trump card. Tonight was different. When he began to cultivate according to the Fire Source Atlas, what he felt the most wasn't totem power, but star power. Star power surged like water. Jiang Wang was certain that his senses were correct. He had absorbed star power thousands of times in the Wuji catacombs on the Void Continent. In the game of life and death, he had relied on star power to defeat Lei Zhanxian in one fell swoop. Before this, Jiang Wang had never directly sensed star power through the fire totem in the modern world. In fact, he hadn't sensed it on the Void Continent either. At that time, he had obtained star power from killing star beasts. But now he had such a feeling. Jiang Wang knew very well what this meant. He could feel it, and he could absorb it. In other words, he had a chance to reproduce that sword move in the game of life and death in the modern world. After discovering this, Jiang Wang was not overjoyed. On the contrary, he became vigilant. He recalled his experience and looked back at himself to see what had changed and what had gone wrong. There must be something wrong if something was wrong. Even if a pie were to fall from the sky, he wouldn't eat it. As a result, he found nothing wrong with himself. Every step of his cultivation had been recorded in the Fire Source Atlas. Then why was his star power so clear? Was it because of Star Moon Plain? Jiang Wang looked around and had a vague feeling that this plane was hiding some great secret. Perhaps it wasn't just a rumor that she and Jingwa couldn't forget this place. Star power and totem power were different. For example, Jiang Wang cultivated the fire source atlas, and the totem power he accumulated was of the fire attribute. Star power, on the other hand, was very pure and had no attribute. The purer it was, the easier it was to use. If it was fire attribute totem power, Jiang Wang could only use it on fire spells. He didn't have to worry about star power at all. Jiang Wang wasn't in a hurry to absorb it. Instead, he sensed the star power in silence. Gradually, he discovered that there were subtle differences between star power and star power. The star power surrounding him now was actually not as pure as the one he had absorbed in the Wuji catacombs on the Void Continent. The reason was probably because all this star power had origins. For example, the densest and closest part of the star power should have come from. Jiang Wang looked up at the night sky. It was Alioth. "We meet again." A gentle voice rang out at the right time. To be precise, it wasn't the voice that rang out. There was no sound in the surroundings. Instead, the meaning of this voice was transmitted through star power. If Jiang Wang couldn't detect this subtle difference and recognize Alioth's star power, he wouldn't have been able to receive this voice. Jiang Wang knew that this was Guan Yan's voice. "What's going on?" Jiang Wang asked in his mind. After a pause, Guan Yan's voice continued through Alioth's star power. "If you want to speak, speak. Star power will transmit to me. In this situation, I can't use mind-reading ability." "How does star power transmit sound?" Jiang Wang asked. "Simulation. You can think of it this way. Your voice has been dissected and refined, and star power replicated every point. Then, it reappears in my ears according to your words." It sounded even more complicated. However, that wasn't Jiang Wang's main point. He asked hesitantly, "You've returned to the modern realm? Through me burning that monk robe?" "No, I'm still in the forest ocean origin world. That robe was purely a way to resolve my past and allow me to be at ease. Thank you for helping me resolve my worries." "Why, you're welcome." It was rare for Jiang Wang to be at a loss for words. This scene was simply too inconceivable. Guan Yin was actually in the forest ocean origin world, talking to him from the modern realm across an immeasurable distance. This wasn't the Xiankong Temple. If the voice had been left behind in the Xiankong Temple, it could have been the karmic connection between the robe and the Xiankong Temple. It could have been Guan Yan's own connection to the Xiankong Temple, or it could have been something he'd left behind before his physical body was destroyed in the forest ocean origin world. So what was the reason now? Chapter 598. Generally speaking, only a tiny bit of true spirit remained, which meant that there was still a chance of reincarnation. It was slightly better than having one's soul completely destroyed. A mere bit of true spirit couldn't even support thought. It was just a mass of chaos and obscurity. Even the slightest breeze could blow it away. Otherwise, a force as powerful as the Void Temple wouldn't have thought that there was no need to rescue Guan Yin after hearing that he only had a tiny bit of true spirit left. Guan Yin was the only exception. His true spirit had survived in the cracks of the forest ocean origin world for 500 years. He had even used his peerless talent to figure out a cultivation method that used the true spirit as a foundation. At the time, this had already shattered Jiang Wang's imagination. And now, Guan Yin was using the power of the Alioth star to communicate with him in a modern realm from the forest ocean origin world. What kind of divine ability could accomplish this? Jiang Wang did his best to calm his emotions and asked, "How far is the forest ocean origin world from the modern realm?" This was a core question. He had indeed been to the forest ocean origin world, but he had descended through the 7-star tower. Even if the 7-star tower reopened and he entered again, it was basically impossible for him to enter the forest ocean origin world again. Therefore, he didn't know the exact location of the forest ocean origin world. If he knew the distance, he might be able to estimate Guan Yan's strength. "I don't know either," Guan Yin replied. "I contacted you through the power of the Alioth star." The Alioth star reflects the forest ocean origin world and the modern realm at the same time. Its star power is omnipresent. In essence, the star was indeed a projection of countless realms. Star power was omnipresent everywhere the star could be seen. Therefore, Guanyin's method was completely feasible. However, while Guanyin spoke of it easily, it was almost impossible to actually accomplish. Through the power of the Alioth star, one could communicate with another world reflected by the Alioth star. This wasn't something that could be explained by just controlling the power of the Alioth star, unless Jiang Wang suddenly recalled what had happened in the forest ocean origin world. They had seen the Alioth star shift and land on the throne formed by the light of the altar. As the dragon god priest, Grandma, annoying, had shouted, "The dragon god shall take the throne." At the time, he had been guessing the relationship between the dragon god and the Alioth star. Unfortunately, with his strength at that time, he was far from being able to find out the truth. There were many secrets in the forest ocean origin world that had yet to be unraveled. The most shocking part was that they'd heard Yin Zhao's cry once more after they'd completely annihilated Yin Zhao and left the void dimension. But Guan Yin didn't talk about this. He must have his own thoughts. Jiang Wang didn't dare to speculate, at least not now. After all, this person possessed the mind-reading ability and had displayed such strength. "This is incredible, Senior Guan Yin," Jiang Wang said. "Your strength is beyond my imagination. It's not as exaggerated as you think." Guan Yin said, "The main reason why I was able to contact you was because after you burned the monk robes, I locked onto the location of the present world. Secondly, it's because you're in Star Moon Plane. This is one of the closest places to the galaxy in the modern world." However, Jiang Wang still found it hard to understand. But Xingyue Plane is a plane. If we talk about distance, the Linzi Stargazing Tower or the top of the Xiankong Temple are much closer, aren't they? The distance I'm talking about doesn't exist in space. But I can't explain it to you because your cultivation hasn't reached that level yet. Fine. Jiang Wang nodded. He knew very well that some things couldn't be understood without standing in that position. Cultivation was like that, and so was life. But at least he knew one thing. Star Moon Plane was indeed special. Then the voice you left behind at the Xiankong Temple. That monk robe was prepared for me by my master. It has a deep karmic connection with me. It's the only tie between me and the present world for a long time. I made a lot of preparations in advance before I could say goodbye. Now, I can't go back to the temple and leave a voice. After saying this, Guan Yin added, "You can do it in Star Moon Plane." Guan Yin was extremely patient. He basically answered all the questions. Then, Jiang Wang asked, "When will you marry the annoying mother-in-law?" The thought transmitted by the Alioth star power paused for a moment. Strictly speaking, after he said goodbye to the Xiankong Temple, he would officially return to the secular world. Jiang Wang's question was indeed somewhat unexpected. "Senior?" Jiang Wang could sense Senior Guan Yan's shyness, even though they were separated by astral power, and it was just his mind. "I haven't manifested myself yet." Manifesting himself? Did that mean he was condensing a physical body? Jiang Wang pondered in his mind. Then he asked, "Then why did you call me this time?" "Actually, I just wanted to see my hometown, but only Star Moon Plane accepted me. I met you there, so I wanted to talk to the people of my hometown," Guan Yin replied. His true spirit had wandered in the cracks of the forest ocean origin realm for 500 years. That kind of loneliness could drive anyone crazy. Only those who truly understood his experience could understand his seemingly boring behavior. After all that effort, he just wanted to see his hometown. "I'm not very good at finding topics." Jiang Wang had an idea. "Why don't we talk about cultivation? My path is already different from yours. It's fine. We can talk about the past." Just think of it as reminiscing about the past. Guan Yin was already a divine Advent cultivator before he abandoned Buddhism. He was more than capable of giving Jiang Wang pointers. Of course, he couldn't say that he was giving pointers right now. He had to say that he was having an exchange, even if it was only one-sided. After all, this conversation was nominally a chat with someone who missed his hometown. Jiang Wang discovered that he had been tortured by bitter consciousness for so long that he seemed to have unknowingly learned a few moves. In any case, Guan Yin didn't refuse. Just like that, the two of them chatted for an entire night. Actually, it was mainly Jiang Wang who asked questions, and Guan Yin who answered. It was rare to meet a senior expert who was easy to talk to. Guan Yin threw out all the questions he had encountered in his cultivation and asked them in great detail. Guan Yin, who had been lonely for 500 years, could probably stay lonely for another 500 years. In any case, he didn't really want to talk anymore. The sky was just beginning to brighten, and the influence of the Aliyah star was still present. He hurriedly expressed that he would stop here for today and talk some other time. In contrast to Guan Yin's unconcealable exhaustion, Jiang Wang was full of energy. He felt that his entire cultivation system had been sorted out and improved greatly. Guan Yin had been evaluated by Zen master Zhi Xie as the person with the highest comprehension ability among all the Buddhas he had seen. How many disciples had the Xiankong temple produced from the Zhi generation to the Jing generation? This evaluation was too high. Although Jiang Wang didn't know that Zen master Zhi Xie had such an evaluation of Guan Yin, it didn't prevent him from being enlightened after talking with Guan Yin. After reluctantly bidding farewell to Guan Yin, Jiang Wang decided to come to Xingyue Plain more often in the future and communicate with him more. Alas, Jiang Wang patted his forehead in annoyance. I forgot to ask Senior if there are any other places like Xingyue Plain that are close to the starry sky after all. This way, even if it's not convenient for me to come to Xingyue Plain in the future, I can still contact Senior elsewhere. After dawn, Xingyue Plain was spacious and empty. There was no one to be seen. A bird of an unknown species landed on the ground with a hard-shelled fruit in its mouth. It kept pecking at the fruit with its beak, trying to eat the flesh inside. While it was working hard, a round squirrel came out of nowhere, grabbed the fruit, and held it in its arms. Its whole body stood up like a human, and its short legs jumped quickly. From afar, it looked like a furry ball of meat rolling on the ground. Soon, it rolled far away. The real winter was about to begin. This relatively warm early winter season was the last time to store grain. Chapter 599. The tall Hai Zoming walked over from afar, like a mountain slowly approaching. Of course, what gave people pressure was not his physique, but his identity. Zhu Biqiong obediently moved to the side of the road to show respect to the sect elder. Zhu Biqiong. Hai Zoming's footsteps stopped beside her. You're called Zhu Biqiong, right? Su Yao's younger sister? That's me. Zhu Biqiong bit her lips and replied. Su Yao was really a good child, talented, and had a good temperament. We elders all thought highly of her. Of course, you're also a good child, Hai Zoming said and sighed. His face that was tanned by the sun showed a trace of shame. I didn't teach my disciples well and raised Hu Xiaoming, such a heartless and unscrupulous person. I am really sorry. Zhu Biqiong didn't know how to respond and could only shake her head to show that it had nothing to do with Elder Hai. Hu Xiaoming deserved to die. Hai Zoming first affirmed and comforted Zhu Biqiong's emotions. Then he said, Right, where's his body buried? When you returned to the sect and mentioned this matter, I was so angry that I didn't want to pay attention to it. But now that I think about it, he is already dead and the grudges have disappeared. No matter what, he was still a disciple of Fishing Ocean Building. As his former master, I should at least bury his body. Burn it along with the house. Zhu Biqiong was a bit nervous. Although she was in the right and her master also supported her, Hai Zoming was still a sect elder. If he really wanted to find trouble with the disciple's body, it would be difficult for her to get away with it. Burn it. Hai Zoming didn't show any anger. He just sighed and said, It's good to burn it. Burn it clean. He stopped at the side of the road and slowly talked to Zhu Biqiong with a kind attitude. He was like a compassionate elder caring for the younger generation. I know Hu Xiaoming's strength. Although he was morally corrupt, he still had some talent in battle. I should have personally cleaned up the sect. Hai Zoming sighed. The grief of losing a disciple and the anger of discovering a disciple with a human face and a beast's heart were well mixed together. It's really hard for a little girl like you. It definitely wasn't easy for you to kill him, right? Are you injured? I have some good healing medicine here. No need, no need. Zhu Biqiang shook her head. I'm not injured. A friend of mine helped me kill him. Friend? Hai Zoming expressed his doubt at the right time. The only clue he could get from the way he addressed Hu Xiaoming as a friend was that the person who killed Hu Xiaoming was not from the Fishing Sea Pavilion. Otherwise, Zhu Biqiang would have called him senior brother or senior sister. Zhu Biqiang nodded. Yes, a friend. This was obviously not the answer that Hai Zoming wanted, but an old fox like him wouldn't show it too blatantly. Your friend helped me clean up the mess. I should thank him personally. Hai Zoming purposely made a thoughtful expression. What would your friend like? Doubt? Origin stone? Secret technique? Magic weapon? The matter has already passed. Elder, you really don't have to spend any more money. It's not your fault that Hu Xiaoming did evil. After all, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his true nature. My sister didn't know that he was such a person. He had strayed off topic. Hai Zoming calmly pulled the topic back. That's true, but the proper etiquette can't be neglected. The cultivators of the Fishing Sea Pavilion shouldn't be gossiped about. He said with some arrogance. You also know the status of our Fishing Sea Pavilion on the sea. Zhu Biqiang had little experience in worldly affairs. Although she had the experience of training in Qingyang town, she was still too inexperienced in front of Hai Zoming. She wanted to refuse, but she didn't know how to refuse. She could only think of one sentence after another. My friend is not in the offshore islands, and he only did things out of sincerity, not for the sake of reciprocation. Hey, Biqiang, you admire your friend so much. Don't tell me you have feelings for him? Hai Zoming deliberately frowned and acted as amiable as Zhu Biqiang's elder. How can a good girl of the offshore islands be taken advantage of by an outsider? Tomorrow, I'll introduce you to a few good young men who won't be worse than him. It's not like that. Zhu Biqiang blushed. We're just friends. I don't believe it. Hai Zoming stared and said, What's his name? I like to see what kind of person he is. How can he be better than the young men of the offshore islands? Is he better than Ji Shaoqing and Su Yuan? You can't be disappointed in the men of the sea because of Hu Xiaoming, this rat shit. Ji Shaoqing and Su Yuan were both disciples of the Fishing Sea Pavilion of Zhu Biqiang's generation. They were influential figures of the younger generation of the offshore islands. Elder, please don't make this kind of joke. It's embarrassing. Zhu Biqiang said helplessly, My friend is Jiang Wang. We're really just friends. This is troublesome. Hai Zoming thought. How could the Fishing Sea Pavilion not pay attention to Qi's situation? Recently, if there was one thing that Qi was most famous for, it would be Jiang Wang's challenge to Lei Zhanqian of Tianjiao. He easily defeated Lei Zhanqian, who was one small realm higher than him. This kind of Qi Tianjiao, even if Hai Zoming was a powerful elder of the Fishing Sea Pavilion, he couldn't be easily moved. If he rashly made a move against Jiang Wang and Qi, it would be the same as leaving his old bones in Qi. No one would let him go. Moreover, with the tense relationship between the Fishing Sea Pavilion and Qi recently, as an elder of the Fishing Sea Pavilion, it would be difficult for him to enter Qi. This matter needed to be discussed at length. Hai Zoming said with some annoyance, It's the famous Tianjiao of Qi. He's not worse than Ji Shaoqing and the others. No wonder he stole your soul. Elder Hai. Zhu Biqiang's face was thin, and she couldn't hold back this kind of teasing. Okay, I won't say any more. Hai Zoming was very kind. He laughed and said, Since you insist on refusing, then let's forget about it. But no matter what, this old man let you and your sister down regarding Hu Xiaoming's matter. Su Yao is no longer here. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come find this old man at any time. In the coastal archipelago, I still have some say. I know. Zhu Biqiang nodded honestly and watched Hai Zoming's tall figure disappear into the distance. Elder Hai isn't as fierce as the rumors say. At least he can distinguish between right and wrong and not blindly protect people. She thought silently. She wanted to continue strolling on the street, but a man in scholarly robes with an unusually high forehead hurriedly ran past her. He shouted, Senior sister, wait for me. The entire Crescent Moon Island belonged to the Fishing Sea Pavilion. Of course, most of the places were inhabited by ordinary islanders. If the Fishing Sea Pavilion was compared to a country, these islanders were the ordinary citizens of the Fishing Sea Pavilion. At this time, the place where Zhu Biqiong was already a place where transcendence gathered. Naturally, flying was prohibited. Only the sex enforcers could freely come and go in the air. Therefore, although this man with a high forehead was obviously a transcendence, he could only rely on his feet to run on the ground. His shout was too loud and too enthusiastic, like a little pig waiting to be fed, attracting the attention of many passers-by. Zhu Biqiong was no exception. She looked in the direction of the voice, wanting to know who the senior sister was and what she looked like. Chapter 600. At the end of the street, there was a graceful figure. Her beautiful hair hung down like a waterfall, covering her slender waist, and the ends of her hair gently rested on her round butt. This was truly a soul-stirring back view. Looking at this figure, everyone immediately understood the eagerness in the tall man's shout. Under everyone's gazes, the woman turned around. She sighed. Zhu Biqiong heard herself let out a sigh. Even though she was a girl, she couldn't help but feel regretful at this moment. This woman's face was too ordinary. It couldn't be said that she was ugly, but her facial features were ordinary, and there was nothing special about her. It really didn't match her figure. Looking at the disappointed expressions of the people on the street, she knew that she wasn't the only one who felt regretful. The woman's expression was a bit impatient. She looked at the tall man who caught up and said, "Su Xiangqian, please don't follow me anymore." Su Xiangqian wasn't disappointed at being rejected at all. His smile was even brighter. "Senior sister, how can I follow you?" This person was really shameless. Zhu Biqiong thought. The woman said angrily, "Since it's a big road, why did you call me? You stopped when I called you." Su Xiangqian was touched. "Senior sister, you really have me in your heart. If you say anything else, I'll tear your mouth apart." The woman's expression sank. "I, Zhao Wuyin, will do what I say." Su Xiangqian had a hurt expression, and his voice became very low. "We're both disciples of the academy. Why are you so distant?" Zhao Wuyin was silent for a while. "I remember that we're not from the same academy. The World Academy is one family. Our Confucian faction disciples are of the same breath and branch. How can we differentiate between you and me?" Su Xiangqian said righteously. "Senior sister, we're so fated, and our sects are so close. How can you keep me at a distance? Dragon Gate Academy and Green Cliff Academy quarrel every few days. I really don't know how our sects are close. I also don't know how we're fated. I just said that I came out to the sea to relax, and you followed me to the islands near the sea. Quarreling means that we're close." Su Xiangqian said righteously. "Did you see you quarreling with Diligent Academy? They couldn't quarrel, right? He looks down on you, and you look down on him. You look down on each other. What's there to argue about?" In the Diligent Academy, there were scholars who devoted themselves to the classics. They often called themselves bookworms, the kind that could hold a book until they died. It was difficult for them to quarrel with anyone. But in Su Xiangqian's mouth, it became disdain. "As for why I came to the coastal islands this time, senior sister, you've really misunderstood me. I've just finished my study tour with Qi. Although Qi is a big place, I've seen all the sceneries. Wasn't this a good opportunity to take a look at the East Arrival Sea? Then I met senior sister." As Su Xiangqian spoke, he slapped his thigh. "If this isn't fate, then what is?" At this time, a woman in a white Confucian robe next to Zhao Wuyin shouted, "This is called shameless." She had 2 dimples on her face, which made her look even more adorable when she was angry. "What study abroad? Wherever senior apprentice sister Zhao goes, you follow her. You're clearly a lecher. When you were in Qi, you probably pestered other girls like this too. I'm afraid you were chased out of Qi, right? I see that you're also a scholar. How can you accuse me?" Su Xiangqian's face was full of anger. "I, Su Xiangqian, am a famous gentleman. How can I be half-hearted? I've liked senior apprentice sister Zhao for a long time. You can insult me, but you can't insult my feelings. When he was in Qi, he had confessed to Li Fengyao. But later, under Li Fengyao's patient persuasion, he changed his mind. Such a short experience was completely negligible to Su Xiangqian. He was just in a daze. Who hasn't been in a daze before? It was not half-hearted. Looking at Su Xiangqian's sad and angry expression, Zhao Wuyin could not understand where his emotions came from. As a genius Confucian cultivator in Longmen Academy, she had many pursuers, but it was rare to see someone as persistent as Su Xiangqian. Zhao Wuyin was having a headache. The last time we met was when Mr. Chun and Mr. Mo were debating. It's been less than a year. Su Xiangqian, why do you like me for so long? Su Xiangqian's expression was sincere, and his eyes were bright. Although we haven't met in the past, I've always liked you. But now that we've met, I've lost you. The woman with the dimples gasped. That's disgusting. Su Xiangqian looked at her with dissatisfaction. Although I'm very charming, I don't think so. I'm very charming, but you shouldn't keep looking for opportunities to talk to me. I'm a loyal person, and I won't fall in love with someone else. The woman with the dimples was so angry that she took a step forward and wanted to hit him. I'm not blind, Ed. Su Xiangqian's tone changed a few times, and he took a step back. Miss, please don't come so close to a man and a woman. My heart is with senior apprentice sister. You have no chance. That's enough, Zishu. Zhao Wuyin pulled the woman with the dimples behind her and looked at Su Xiangqian with a serious expression. Senior apprentice brother Su, we're both from the Confucian sect, so I'll call you senior apprentice brother. I've reminded you to watch your words, right? She was going to teach him a lesson. Su Xiangqian immediately spread his hands and even deliberately relaxed his Tao energy. He looked as if he had been wronged. I didn't make you up, senior apprentice sister. I'm just expressing my inner thoughts. Can I do that? Zhao Wuyin was speechless for a moment. Although Su Xiangqian had been talking nonsense, he didn't make her up. If she were to teach him a lesson, it would make her seem unreasonable. Su Xiangqian was a disciple of Green Cliff Academy, and his master was famous for being protective. Even if she wanted to teach him a lesson, she couldn't be too harsh. When Zhu Biqiong heard this, she was about to leave. She couldn't stand Gao Xiangqian's shamelessness. However, the conversation that followed attracted her attention again. He heard Zhao Wuyin say, All right, you say you like me, but I hate ignorant and incompetent people the most. You said you just finished your study at Qi. I'd like to ask, what's your ranking among the younger generation at Qi? Su Xiangqian didn't hesitate. Of course I'm one of the best. Zhao Wuyin wanted him to back off, but she didn't expect Su Xiangqian's skin to be thicker than she imagined. Wasn't he talking nonsense when she wasn't at Qi? The girl named Ji Shu was so angry that she laughed. One of the best. How arrogant. Did you defeat Wang Yiwu or Lei Zhanqian? Are you stronger than Jiang Wang? The offshore islands were close to Qi, and they had always been concerned about Qi. During this period of time, the most famous person among the younger generation was Jiang Wang. Ji Shu and Zhao Wuyin had heard about Jiang Wang several times in the offshore islands, so they had a deep impression of him. Ha! It was fine if they were talking about someone else. When they talked about Jiang Wang, Su Xiangqian immediately laughed. He laughed heartily and said proudly, Humbly speaking, Jiang Wang and I should be on par with each other and can be considered to be on par with each other. We're like brothers. We are known as the two prides of Mount Haste. If you don't believe me, you can ask around in Linzi. Chapter 601. Su Xiangqian made it sound as if it was true, especially since the title of the Twin Prides of Mount Haste had been brought out. This kind of thing could be easily verified. The Twin Prides of Mount Haste. Jishu had forgotten her anger. She was simply curious about Jiang Wang's reputation in Tianjiao. What does Mount Haste mean? Some passers-by who heard them whispered, Do you know where Mount Haste is? I don't know. Is it the name of a mountain? Or is it some hidden government office of Qi? Mount Haste is a special place. It has a special meaning to us. However, his fame is his own business. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want people to say that I'm bluffing. You just need to know that Jiang Wang and I are known as the Twin Prides. Su Xiangqian waved his hand dismissively, as if he really didn't want to talk about it. "That's right, Miss Jishu," he continued. "Unfortunately, my heart already belongs to someone. However, I know that you're actually a good woman. It just so happens that my brother Jiang Wang is also unmarried. Would you like to get to know him?" This was too sudden. The woman named Ji Shu didn't know what to do. For someone like Jiang Wang, who was famous in Tianjiao for qi, she would definitely be willing to get to know him. However, she definitely wouldn't want to get married before even meeting him. "It's all right." Su Xiangqian was very considerate and elegant. "With Miss Ji Shu's qualifications, you're more than enough for him. Later, I'll find an opportunity to introduce you to each other. When the time comes, if you think it's good, then continue. If not, then just be friends." His mouth was attentive to Ji Shu, but his eyes occasionally glanced at Zhao Wuyan. It was obvious that he had an ulterior motive. He hoped that Ji Shu would also help him matchmake. For this, he didn't hesitate to do it without Jiang Wang's knowledge. Thus, he arranged a marriage for him. While Ji Shu was still hesitating, Su Xiangqian had already found a new idea. "Zhao Shiji, actually, do you know the details of the battle between Jiang Wang and Lei Zhanqian?" Victory and defeat were not that simple. The rumors that were spreading like wildfire were actually inaccurate in many places. Even though I wasn't in Linzi at the time, I've already reminded Jiang Wang about this battle and made some insignificant contributions. "How about this? I know of a very elegant tea house up ahead. Why don't we sit down and have a cup of tea and slowly talk about it?" Zhu Biqiong facepalmed. "Oh my God, does Jiang Wang have friends like that?" Unable to watch any longer, he turned around and left. I had to remind Jiang Wang not to make friends with just anyone. He was too naive and could be easily deceived. In particular, he had to be wary of a guy with an unusually high forehead. Zhu Biqiong thought. Zhu Biqiong and her sister, Zhu Xiao, were disciples of Granny Bai Zhu, an elder of Sea Fishing Pavilion. Of course, the reason why Zhu Biqiong was able to become a personal disciple was purely due to Granny Bai Zhu's favoritism toward Zhu Xiao. There were a total of 24 elders in the Fishing Sea Tower. They were the highest level below the Tower Lord. Therefore, Zhu Biqiong's life on the Isle of Huai was very good. She couldn't compete for the best resources, but she didn't need to compete for the slightly inferior resources. Therefore, no one would target her. Apart from often thinking of her sister, Zhu Xiao, and sometimes thinking of the days in Xingyang town, she spent most of her remaining time living a carefree life. Returning to her room, a servant came to remind her. Granny Bai Zhu asked for her. Zhu Biqiong didn't bother to freshen up or do anything else. She went out in a daze and walked towards Granny Bai Zhu's bamboo house. To be honest, she was a bit nervous. She didn't know why Granny Bai Zhu was looking for her. Granny Bai Zhu was naturally good to her. But part of this was because of her sister, and part of it was because of her. Although she was naive, she wasn't completely clueless. When she went upstairs, Granny Bai Zhu was feeding the fish. She had a huge transparent water tank that took up almost half of the room. There were many different kinds of fish in it, but all of them were brightly colored. There was an inexplicable sense of beauty. "Sit anywhere." Granny Bai Zhu didn't turn around. Zhu Biqiong looked around and casually found a chair to sit on. Granny Bai Zhu was still standing there feeding the fish. Fortunately, she had always been simple-minded and could see through the nature of things at a glance. Granny Bai Zhu didn't care about her. She just slowly tore off a piece of raw meat, probably beef, and threw it into the fish tank. Granny Bai Zhu casually asked, "Did Hai Zoming look for you?" Zhu Biqiong still knew basic etiquette. She hurriedly got up and answered, "Yes, just now when I was shopping outside. This old guy is not a good person. You have to be more careful when you meet him in the future. Don't say anything." Granny Bai Zhu observed the fish eating and asked, "What did he say to you?" Zhu Biqiong honestly answered, "He said he wanted to thank me for killing Hu Xiaoming. He also wanted to give me a gift." "Oh," Granny Bai Zhu asked, "what gift?" "I didn't accept it." Zhu Biqiong shook her head. "The person he wanted to thank is Jiang Wang, but Jiang Wang won't accept it. Jiang Wang doesn't even know him." Granny Bai Zhu stopped tearing the raw meat in her hand and sighed. You told him that Jiang Wang helped you kill Hu Xiaoming? Zhu Biqiang had already reported this to Granny Baizhu. At that time, Jiang Wang didn't have such a reputation. Yes, Zhu Biqiang still didn't know where the problem was, so she just stood there with a silly smile. Granny Baizhu simply threw the whole piece of raw meat into the fish tank and clapped her hands. The blood flowed from her hands as if it had a mind of its own and jumped into the fish tank. Don't worry about this matter. Don't go out of the sect for a while. She took a white cloth and wiped her hands, even though her hands were already very clean. No matter how naive Zhu Biqiang was, she realized that something was wrong. Granny, her voice trembled a little. Shouldn't I mention Jiang Wang? Yes. Granny Baizhu wiped her hands and said casually, Hai Zoming should be thinking of a way to kill Jiang Wang. There was nothing to hide from her own disciple. It was just like how she said that Hai Zoming was not a good person. Zhu Biqiang's feet trembled. She realized that she had made a big mistake. What should I do, Granny? Her face was pale. Elder Hai Zoming was a master at the peak of the outer building realm. Jiang Wang was no match for him. Granny Baizhu thought for a while and said, There's nothing to worry about. That Jiang Wang is so famous in Qi. People in Qi won't allow Hai Zoming to hurt him. But since Hai Zoming values Hu Xiaoming so much, you shouldn't leave the sect for a while to avoid accidents. But Zhu Biqiang couldn't think about herself at this time. Elder Hai is so powerful. He has a way to sneak into Qi, right? If he finds a chance to secretly kill Jiang Wang, even if someone avenges him, it will be meaningless. Then what do you want me to do? Granny Baizhu looked at her with dissatisfaction. Biqiang, you need to know your identity, and you also need to know my identity. No matter how bad Hai Zoming is, he is still an elder of the Fishing Sea Tower. Do you want me to contact Qi and ask them to prepare in advance to ambush and kill Hai Zoming? The altar under the Tianya stage was set up for such traitors. Chapter 602. Facing Granny Bijou's questioning, Zhu Biqiang was completely flustered. No, disciple doesn't dare. But, no buts. Granny Bijou waved her hand. You can leave, this matter ends here. Zhu Biqiang opened her mouth to say something, but a gentle force pushed her out of the door. She stood at the door in a daze for a while, but in the end, she staggered down the bamboo building by herself. On the bamboo building, Granny Bijou gently frowned. Hai Zoming didn't ask about Hu Xiaoming before, but now he suddenly pursued this matter. There must be a reason. Is there a secret on Hu Xiaoming? But it doesn't matter. Granny Bijou shook her head. No matter what secret made Hai Zoming lose his mind, as long as he tried to kill Jiang Wang, Qi won't let him go. The only premise is, Qi needs to know about this matter. In this, I don't need to do anything. She turned her head to look at the window, but the window was closed, so naturally she couldn't see the sky outside. Thinking of Zhu Biqiang's innocent appearance, she finally sighed. Suyao, if you were still alive, Granny wouldn't have made such a choice. No, Granny didn't do anything. If Biqiang was a little smarter, things could still be salvaged. Yes, I know she is very simple. I admit I know what she would choose. If something happened to Hai Zoming, Granny would be one step closer to that position. You are so considerate, you should understand, right? Hu Xiaoming turned you into an extreme person, so it's very appropriate for him and his master to be buried with you. Suyao, you are gone, and my efforts on you are in vain. You shouldn't blame me. After muttering, she finally calmed down and obtained inner peace, so she sat down quietly. She sat on the chair that Zhu Biqiang sat on before. I absolutely can't sit back and watch Jiang Wang be in danger. This was the clearest thought in Zhu Biqiang's mind. If Jiang Wang got into an accident, because of her, she would never forgive herself for the rest of her life. However, with her strength, it was impossible for her to shake Elder Hai Zoming, who held real power in the Fishing Sea Tower. How do we do it? Zhu Biqiang walked out without a clue. She did not know where she was going or what she should do. She had always relied on her elder sister for everything. But his sister was no longer here. For the umpteenth time, she realized that her sister was no longer around. Every reminder in life made her feel even more difficult. When they were in Qingyang town, it was much easier. Regardless of whether it was Xiao Xiao or Forward, neither of them would make her feel pressured. Zhu Biqiang shook her head and got rid of the distracting thoughts that could not help the current situation. In this matter, the only person she could rely on was Granny Bijou, but Granny Bijou had made it clear that she would not interfere in this matter. What should he do? At this time, she suddenly remembered what Granny Bijou had said. Cheese people will not allow Hai Zongming to hurt him. As long as Jiang Wang knew of Hai Zongming's murderous intent, and as long as the experts on Qi's side were prepared, Hai Zongming would never be able to hurt Jiang Wang no matter how powerful he was. After all, that was Qi, the overlord of the eastern region. Therefore, the most important thing now was to inform Jiang Wang and let him know that Hai Zongming wanted to kill him so that he could take precautions. But now, she lacked the means to contact Jiang Wang in time. She was afraid that she would not be able to make it in time to go to Qi. Writing a letter was even more dangerous. If it was intercepted by Hai Zongming, it would be self-defeating. After thinking for a while, Zhu Biqiang thought of Jiang Wang's friend who was now on Crescent Moon Island. Zhu Biqiang hurriedly rushed to the Cloud Tea House. She was familiar with every blade of grass and every tree on the Crescent Moon Island. Near the place where Su Xiangxian and Zhao Wuyan were talking, this was the only tea house that could be considered elegant. Fortunately, when she arrived at the tea house, Su Xiangxian and the others had not left yet. She did not know what method he used, but Miss Xi Shu, who was very displeased with him before, was now chatting happily with him and laughing from time to time. Zhao Wuyan, on the other hand, was still indifferent and kept a considerable distance from him. Fortunately, you didn't leave. Zhu Biqiang rushed over excitedly. May I ask who you are? Su Xiangxian was very gentle and elegant. In front of strangers, he was not lacking in manners. Zhu Biqiang looked around. The tea house was obviously not a convenient place to talk, so she pulled Su Xiangxian out. Let's talk outside. Su Xiangxian shook her off and took a step back. He looked at Zhao Wuyan's expression and said, Miss, please respect yourself. I'm not a casual person. Zhu Biqiang was stunned. I'm not either. She was angry. I have something to talk to you about. Let's talk outside. It's urgent. Su Xiangxian was still not in a hurry. If you have something to say it here. I have always been open and above board. There is nothing that cannot be said. Zhu Biqiang was about to speak when she suddenly realized that this matter needed to be kept secret. However, Zhu Biqiang was not a clear-headed person. She angrily glared at him and turned to leave. Su Xiangxian ignored her and sat back at the tea table. He shook his head and laughed. Buddhism says that the flesh is just a stinky bag. It's not without reason. It's too burdensome. I always encounter these things that make me distressed. Sigh. He sighed. However, the women of the coastal islands are too passionate and unrestrained. Zhao Wuyan's vision was broader. She heard him and said, Those who see the flesh as a stinky bag are only one of them. The mainstream of Buddhism actually sees the flesh as a boat in the sea of bitterness. Senior sister, you're so knowledgeable. At this moment, Zhu Biqiang's voice came into his ears. Jiang Wang is in danger. Su Xiangxian had just praised her, but before he could start flattering her, he immediately stood up and disappeared from the tea house. Ji Shu was stunned. Zhao Wuyan smiled and waved for the waiter to settle the bill. Maybe the women of the coastal islands are too passionate. Su Xiangxian chased out of the tea house and followed Zhu Biqiang's back into a small alley. He restrained his carefree attitude, and his expression was unusually serious. Who are you? What happened to Jiang Wang? Don't worry about who I am. Zhu Biqiang said anxiously. You said that you and Jiang Wang are like brothers. You should have a way to contact him immediately, right? He's in danger now. There's an expert at the peak of the outer building realm who wants to kill him. Who wants to kill him? Su Xiangxian frowned. The powerful elder of the fishing sea tower, Hai Zongming. Don't waste time. Hurry up and contact Jiang Wang. Su Xiangqian had countless questions in his heart, but he knew that this was not the time to ask. I can't contact him now. Zhu Biqiong was furious. Aren't you the twin prides of the Horse Mountain? Aren't you like brothers? So you're just lying to me, right? Don't worry, don't worry. Su Xiangqian hurriedly stopped her from shouting. I have a way. I know someone who can contact Linzi immediately. Jiang Wang must be in Linzi right now. Who? Li Fengyao. Su Xiangqian rubbed his hands, but she's on Ice Phoenix Island now. Recently, the islands controlled by the Fishing Sea Tower and Cheese Islands are not very peaceful. I have to think of a way to get there quickly. I have a way. Zhu Biqiong didn't waste time and said directly, come with me. At this time, Jiang Wang didn't know the malice and kindness in the distance. He felt that he had solved all the problems in the Eastern Territory. After relaxing, he couldn't suppress his longing for an inn. How much taller had she grown? Did she study hard? How was her martial arts practice? Was she happy in the Cloud Tower? He missed it in so much. After leaving Xingyue Plain, he hurried and finally stepped into Zhang's territory when the sky had just darkened. Chapter 603. He had arranged to meet up with Xiang Qian at a small city in Zheng. Xiang Qian and his master had been here before when they were traveling the world. Jiang Wang had also passed by this small city when he was on his way to Qi from Yun Nation. When he entered the city gate, Jiang Wang happened to see two guards tearing up the notice on the wall while it was dark. With Jiang Wang's current eyesight, he could see it clearly. Those were a few wanted posters, and the target was none other than Hell. There was a Yama mask on the warrant, as well as a portrait of Yingguan. Among the Yama masks, Yingguan was the only one who had revealed his true appearance. The Gateless Hell had once tried to assassinate Chu Kingdom's border general. Although the Gateless Hell had never announced the identity of the buyer, the rumors had always pointed to Zheng Kingdom. Thus, in the eyes of those with discerning eyes, the Hell's assassination was obviously meant to incite conflict between Chu and Zheng. Since the mastermind behind the scenes was not exposed, Chu and Zheng placed their main target on Doorless Hell. Since then, Hell had always been on the wanted posters of Chu and Zheng. However, Hell was too powerful. Any expert below the God Descent realm would be courting death. In small countries like Chu and Zheng, there were limited experts. It was impossible for God Descent realm experts to chase Hell all over the world. Thus, for such a long time, the results were minimal. They only caught a few small fries at the periphery of Hell. However, in order to express their determination, Hell's wanted posters were hung at the city gates of these two countries. Cheng Gengsheng had already discussed this matter with Jiang Wang. However, Zheng had already started tearing up the wanted posters. In Jiang Wang's eyes, Yulong had personally captured King Taishan and opened up a gap in the pursuit. In the end, only 2 people escaped from Hell. The Blue Metal Pursuit Team's mission could not be considered a failure. However, Hell's assassination of an Outer Building Realm official from the Ministry of Rights left 4 Outer Building Realm experts behind. No matter how he looked at it, it was not worth it. However, he had neglected the fact that Qi was a colossus. Hell's assassination in Qi City was completed and successfully escaped. Even if only 2 Yama Kings managed to escape in the end, it would still be a feat worthy of being written about. After this battle, the reputation of the Gateless Hell grew. Not only were they famous in the eastern region, but they also seemed to be competing for the title of the world's #1 assassin organization. The fact that the state of Zheng had given up on the bounty was undoubtedly a testament to the power of the Gateless Hell. It didn't seem to be a rational choice to make a killer organization famous. But Jiang Wang understood why Yingguan did this. He had escaped from Yu Country, but his cousin was still in Yu Country. The more famous he was, the safer his cousin would be. Why is it that out of all the Yama Kings in the entire infernal realm, only he continues to reveal his true appearance? Because he wanted to let the Imperial Advisor know that he was still alive and that he was getting stronger and stronger. Perhaps because Jiang Wang's gaze lingered for too long, the guard who tore the notice fiercely roared, "What are you looking at? Do you want to die?" Jiang Wang didn't care. He withdrew his gaze and walked into the city. Soldiers were often the people with the strongest sense of honor for a country. As soldiers of the state of Zheng, they couldn't do anything about an assassin organization and could only secretly tear down the wanted notice under the cover of darkness. This was undoubtedly a kind of humiliation, so it was inevitable that they would be in a bad mood. Jiang Wang could understand. He had agreed to meet up with Xiang Qian at the first inn they saw after entering the city. This inn was called Yingbin Lu. It was a very common name. Naturally, the inn's environment was also very ordinary. Jiang Wang walked to the counter. "Shopkeeper, please ask, which room is Xiang Qian staying in? I'm his friend, and we agreed to meet here." "Xiang Qian?" The middle-aged shopkeeper flipped through the directory. "Little brother, are you in the wrong place? There's no such person in this inn." Jiang Wang thought for a moment. "I'm looking for a middle-aged man with a dead fish face who looks like he hasn't woken up yet." In fact, Xiang Qian's real age was only 20 years old. But if he didn't say it, no one would be able to tell. The shopkeeper suddenly understood. "Are you talking about Mr. Jiang Wang?" "Yes, that's him. So, this is what it feels like to have your name borrowed." Jiang Wang almost coughed out loud, but he managed to stop himself. "Sky room number 3. The middle-aged shopkeeper lowered his head and looked again. Then, he said somewhat embarrassedly, "You're his friend, so can you help him settle the bill? He only booked the room for 1 day, but he's already stayed for 3 days." As for why Xiang Qian could stay for 3 days without being chased out after spending only 1 day's money. How could an ordinary person have the guts to chase away a transcendent cultivator? "Sorry for the trouble." Jiang Wang awkwardly took out some knife coins to pay the bill. Knife coins were relatively common in the entire eastern region. Gold and silver items could be used everywhere, but Jiang Wang didn't have too much in his storage box. He would use them after leaving the eastern region. After all, at the level he was in contact with, the currency was Dao origin stones. When he arrived outside the room, Jiang Wang didn't knock on the door. Instead, he directly opened the door and pushed it open. Sure enough, Xiang Qian was lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. It seemed he hadn't moved in the past 3 days. Of course, Jiang Wang knew that as long as he showed hostility, Xiang Qian would immediately wake up. But this didn't mean that Xiang Qian was alert. It was just that his flying sword was sensitive. Jiang Wang stepped forward and lifted the quilt. "It's time to go." Xiang Qian opened his eyes dizzily. When he saw Jiang Wang, he immediately closed them again. Didn't it just get dark? Sleep a little more. He slept during the day and slept at night. For him, no matter where he went, it was just a change of place to sleep. Jiang Wang shook his head helplessly and didn't say anything else. He casually found a chair in the room and sat down cross-legged to begin today's evening class. Although he had already opened up his inner mansion, the isolated island of heaven and earth still needed to be adjusted. But as his cultivation grew day by day, he didn't need to spend so much time. Most of his time still had to be spent in the inner mansion. Cleaning and exploring the inner mansion was both the experience of exploring the human body's treasury and the process of self-recognition. A wise man once said, "The inner mansion is the body within the body, the room within the room." It could be seen what the inner mansion meant for cultivators. After this period of cleaning, Jiang Wang had already felt the outline of the human body's secret treasure. It could be unearthed at any time. For inner mansion Xiozha, the Ubijna seed was of course the highest pursuit. But the Ubijna seed could only be found by chance. Out of 100 inner mansion Xiozha, there might not even be one that could pluck one. For Xiozha, who had no fate with Ubijna, unearthing the human body's secret treasure was the greatest goal of the inner mansion realm. Jiang Wang's current pursuit was also the secret treasure. In the midst of cultivation, the night passed very quickly. Jiang Wang opened his eyes. Everything in the room was the same as yesterday. Xiang Qian hadn't even adjusted his sleeping position. If he put this effort into cultivation, this kid might already be able to reach the peak of flying sword. "Wake up!" Jiang Wang shouted. Jiang Wang was sure that his shout woke Xiang Qian up because his breathing stopped for a moment. But Xiang Qian still didn't make a sound. He probably wanted to pretend to be asleep. Jiang Wang didn't waste any more words. He flicked a flame flower with his finger. It floated above Xiang Qian and fell at a constant speed. Xiang Qian stayed still for a while. Knowing that there was no more room to struggle, he rolled up and cleverly avoided the flame flower. As if nothing had happened, he didn't wash up and directly said, "Let's go." Chapter 604. When Jiang Wang came to Qi, he crossed the Chong River early and went through what Ji you all the way to Qi. In fact, he deliberately bypassed Jing and went north of the central region. The three branches of the Jingwa sect stood side by side. It was undoubtedly the core of all the Taoist countries. Jiang Wang, who had just escaped from Zhuang, subconsciously wanted to stay away from it. In fact, if he was familiar with the route, he would have gone straight down the Chong River to the Xia Kingdom in the southern region and then went north to Qi much faster. This time, when Jiang Wang left the state of Qi, he had to bypass the state of Yu and try his best to avoid contact with the state preceptor, Zhao Tsong, who hid a dagger behind his smile. Therefore, the final route he planned was almost close to the state of Jing. Xiang Qian never expressed any thoughts about the route. He didn't care about the route. His only suggestion was how to get more rest. However, Jiang Wang completely ignored it. Since he set out from Zheng, the only time he had to rest was when he cultivated with Jiang Wang. After another day of traveling, the two stopped in a mountain forest. The early winter night was very quiet. Xiang Qian found a random tree and lay down on the branch. In the past, he could fall asleep as soon as he lay down. However, for some reason, he didn't fall asleep immediately today. It wasn't because of the environment. He was never picky about the environment. The young man named Jiang Wang was sitting cross-legged in the open space in the forest. The moonlight sprinkled all over his body. Traveling was actually very tiring. Even if an extraordinary cultivator's physique was much better than ordinary people, the tens of thousands of miles of travel would still bring about unbearable fatigue. Along the way, Jiang Wang cultivated in addition to traveling. Every day, he had morning and evening classes, as well as familiarizing himself with Taoist techniques and practicing his swordsmanship. He never slacked off, although Xiang Qian didn't say it. How could he not know about Jiang Wang's reputation in Linzi? Qingyang Town was a small town, and Duga Xiao was only a maid. However, the new mayor of Jia City was polite to her. Wasn't it because of Jiang Wang? Jiang Wang, known as the Tianjiao of Qi, Jiang Wang, who had a bright future, was still working hard. Xiang Qian couldn't deny the envy in his heart. He was not envious of Jiang Wang's fame. He envied Jiang Wang for being able to move forward so resolutely, while he himself had long lost his goal. He paused for a moment before closing his eyes again. How could there be an if in this world? It was better to sleep. Jiang Wang had no distracting thoughts when he was cultivating, unlike his former self who had a lot on his mind. If one were to look at the 5 prefectures see, the Taoist veins were suspended on the isolated island of heaven and earth. The isolated island of heaven and earth was suspended on the sea. In the sky above the sea, there was a huge sun hanging high. That was where the first inner prefecture was located. His spirit leaped into the inner mansion. The interior was different. It was not the interior of a fireball. Instead, they were connected rooms. The room was not big, only 4 walls. The size, width, and even brightness of each room were exactly the same. This made Jiang Wang think of Jiqing, the city of the Tian family. Just like the word Tian, all the rooms were the same. He didn't know if it was an imitation of the design of the inner prefecture. Jiang Wang walked through the identical rooms one by one. He used his spirit to sense every detail. This process was called cleaning. When one reached the inner prefecture realm, the cultivation began to use the spirit. The process of cleaning the inner prefecture was also a process of tempering the spirit. If the spirit was compared to a baby, it would be raised in the swaddling clothes for a long time after it was born, which was the Tongtian Palace. It was not until the inner prefecture was opened that it was out of this swaddling clothes. At first, it just learned to walk and stumbled. Then it was running and even flying. But Jiang Wang's situation was different. Because he had received the appreciation of the people of Qingyang Town and had passed the red makeup mirror flying snow tribulation, his spirit was far stronger than the ordinary inner prefecture. When he was still in the swaddling clothes, he could already run and even fly. At this moment, when he was cleaning the inner prefecture, there were 300 black hidden snakes wandering around, which helped him greatly reduce the time it took to clean the rooms. The number of rooms in the inner prefecture was infinite. In theory, it could be explored infinitely. Buddhism said, 3,000 worlds can be seen in a grain of sand. Even in the tiniest place, it was possible to extend infinitely. The inner prefecture was where the hidden treasures were, so it was the same. But it didn't necessarily mean that the more rooms one explored, the stronger one would be. After all, no matter how far one explored, one could only choose one hidden treasure. There were many hidden treasures in the inner prefecture. One could choose one at will. But if one missed it, it would not appear again. Some cultivators went all the way down, constantly giving up and exploring, wholeheartedly seeking the best hidden treasures. But they found that the later ones were not as good as the ones they gave up at the beginning. They became more and more unwilling to give up and could only sink deeper and deeper. In the end, they wasted their time and moved forward in vain. Therefore, in the inner prefecture realm, Jiang Wang received advice from Zhuo Guangshu, Cheng Gengsheng, and even Guanyin. They all said that if one encountered a suitable hidden treasure, he should immediately seize it. There was no limit to greed. The Tongtian Palace was really like a palace, and the inner prefecture was indeed like a mansion. In Jiang Wang's case, the Tongtian Palace was simple and unadorned, tall and broad, while the inner prefecture was cramped and complicated. Every room in the inner prefecture was empty, but at the same time, all of the rooms had a faint light. The faint light came from the shadow of the seed hanging on the ceiling. It was a fiery red, tapered, oval seed, representing the supernatural power of the true samadhi fire. The supernatural power reflected every room that Jiang Wang explored in the inner prefecture, helping him to see the details more easily. With the help of the 300 spirit hidden snakes, the number of rooms Jiang Wang had explored today had reached exactly 1,296. There was a sudden feeling of being touched that caused Jiang Wang to be intoxicated. He relaxed his mind, and his spirit manifested on the furthest spirit hidden snake. The rooms were exactly the same, but there were different traces. The supernatural power seed of the true samadhi fire turned from illusion to reality, manifesting here and illuminating all the details. Jiang Wang's mind, at a certain moment, was trapped in the boundless void. In the boundless universe, two stars collided. An enormous explosion occurred, and the destructive power spread far and wide. Countless tangible and intangible existences were destroyed. Yet those who looked up at the starry sky might only see a dot of light. That was starfire. Jiang Wang found the answer. Secret manual, starfire. Once this secret manual was activated, it could last for 15 minutes. Its effect was to increase the power of fire-type Dao techniques by 10%. Jiang Wang had Master Crown of Thorns that could increase the power of Dao techniques by 20 to 30%. But that Dao technique had only started out as a second-class, high-class Dao technique. While it had been deduced on the Dao development platform, its effect had become more and more limited. 4 A-class, middle-class Dao techniques like the 8-sound Flame Sparrow and the Flame Sparrow Holding Flower, the amplification effect was extremely weak, and it also increased the attack time. So Jiang Wang rarely used it. But the secret manual was different. The secret manual of the human body would grow with the Xiuzhe and could be used forever. At different levels, it could maintain its effect. Jiang Wang did not hesitate and grasped the ball of starfire. This might not be the strongest secret manual, but was undoubtedly very suitable for Jiang Wang's present combat system. He did not plan on looking at the path ahead of him, no matter how many choices there were. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.